crack the whip on it. I'm up. Call the meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. I'll introduce the panel members. To my left is Susan Gifford. To my far left, Robert Buss. I'm Marcel Legrand, who I'll be chairing. Our assessor today is Merrick Froelich, and our administrative assistant today is Carrie Mulshaw. We will be hearing applications for revision of assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application. We will limit those discussions to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matter must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessment of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council as independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decision with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to an application of exemption from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence on an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. Please have your cell phones on silent. Swear them in, please.
Please state your name.
Merrick Froelich.
Do you swear the evidence you present today is the truth and the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Please state your name.
Travis Smith.
Do you swear the evidence you present today is the truth and the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do, thank you.
We will be starting with file 2420 McPhillips Street. Merrick, when you are ready.
File number 174876 for 2018. Address is 2420 McPhillips Street. The business name is Birchwood Hyundai, and the owners is BHN Holdings Limited. Initially, the ARV value was $276,840, using a total premise area of 17,903, with an overall square foot rate of $15.46 a square foot. Following the 2018 board decision, we would like to make a recommendation of cutting the value to $243,720, which works out to $11.43 plus expenses.
You okay with that?
I am in agreement.
Any questions from the panel members?
No questions.
I guess the Board at the time must have adjusted the rent, right?
Only one.
Must have been me. On to the next one. 1411 Region. When you're ready.
File number 174878. Roll year is 2018. Address is 1411 Regent Avenue. Business name is Birchwood Honda Center. Owners are Carlo Trade Center Limited. We have a total ARV value of $102,120. We have a total premise area of 6,677. And we have an overall ARV per square foot of $15.29 a square foot. Using the premise area of 6,677, we have a base ARV of $1313, plus total occupancy cost of $14,476 to come up with an ARV value of $102,120. On the first page, what I've done is I've provided some comparables of VSG comparables that are in the northern part of this, well, north and northeastern part of the city. I have a couple on Henderson Highway. I got one on McPhillips. I got one on St. Anne's. I got one on Vermilion. So these rents represent the VSG portion of it, and they range from $11.50 a square foot to $18 a square foot. The range of square footages is 3,000 to 6,238 square feet. On the next page, what we've done is, because majority of car dealerships are owner occupied, so there's not a lot of market rents out there for owner occupied retail centers. So what we've done is we've compared large big box retail centers that have a combination of retail space and storage space. And as you can see, I have 39 comparables that range in sizes from, say, 9,000 square feet to a high of 47,000 square feet. Actually, I got one here of 97,415. So there's a wide range of areas. And in all these comparables, the buildings are mixed use. There is storage, there is retail, just like in a car dealership. There's the retail component, there's office component, and then there are components of it that have a lesser finish, which would be where they do the service work on it. Page 3 shows an overview of where it's located at. It's located at east of Lagimodi and Regent, just east of the casino, in between the casino and Owen Street. And on this, so if you're looking at this property here, there's 2 business assessment units. This one here is the Honda Center with the red dot, and that's like a service center that they sell used cars. And one to the right is a full-scale Honda dealership. On page 4, it shows a decision that had taken place on the retail side of things, where a cut was made, and it was based on the city's operating income and a cap rate of 8.25. Page 6 shows our original workup for the City of Winnipeg assessment and taxation. And page 7 shows a cut that had taken place. What I've shown on page 8 is I've just shown the workup where they've separated the two bids that are for the 2 different properties. The one that we're dealing with right now is the smaller one at 6,677. And page 9 just shows a breakdown of what the income stream would be with a reduction in the cap rate. So on page 9, it's using a 7.75% cap rate. Page 10 shows an 8.25 cap rate. So based on what had happened at the 2018 realty decision, I'd like to confirm the assessed value using the same rental rate that they had used of $13.13 plus expenses, to confirm the assessed value at 102,120. I'm open to questions.
Questions, Chair?
Yes, so this property was built in 1986, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and it's operating as a used car auto center?
Yeah, they're both listed on the BA side of things as Boardroom Honda Centers.
Okay, but this is the used car.
Yeah, that's what it said on the signage when I took a look at it.
Okay. The comparables that you have on your first page there, they are largely tire centers, muffler centers, oil change places, is that correct? Midas, Fountain Tire?
Well, they're vehicle service garages, and so there's a combination. One was a Midas. They all do various types of vehicle service work. They're just not limited to oil changes. Some of them are, but some of them are not. But the key is they're on good streets with high traffic, which is similar to the subject property.
So looking at the comparables again on the first page there, the size of these units is generally considerably smaller than the subject, 3,000 to 4,000 for the most part, a couple slightly larger than that, right? And they're specifically built for their uses rather than as automobile dealerships, is that correct?
They serve the same function. The 6,677 square feet consists of a retail component of selling cars and a service component of fixing cars. So if we take the square footage and cut it in half, then they would be, my comparable square foot areas would be quite similar.
If I were to walk into, say, a Fountain Tire, would it be similar in structure to the subject?
No, this is a different beast.
Okay.
These are all car dealerships that we're dealing with today. But what I want to do is I want to show a reflection of this, of what vehicle service garage rental spaces are and other retail centers are.
Okay.
Because we all know in major big box retail, it's not all finished in a retail capacity, and that there's storage space where the finish is lower, which is subsequently what happens with a lot of these car dealerships as well.
So if let's move on to your page number, make sure I'm on the right brief here, page number 2. And the comparables there, these are your big box centers, right?
These are the ones that we have, yes.
Okay, and typically we're looking from a low end of what, roughly 15,000 all the way up to 97,000 square feet.
Yep.
Most of them over 30,000 square feet. And our comparable today is 6,600, 6,677.
Yep.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Rob, do you have any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Susan?
The retail rental rates that you're showing here, are they within big development areas, like,
Well, some of them are. So for example, on 1610 Regent, there's a Good Life Fitness, which is 23,000 square feet, 23,813. It's in $17.10.
but no, my question was, are these in strip malls or large developed malls? Are these all contained within a mall setting?
No, they're usually single individual. Some of them are, you know, like say for example, like 795 Leela, which is the Yisk, which is right across from Garden City Shopping Center. So there's a Home Depot there, there's a Yisk, that's where the Safeway used to be. You know, so then we're looking at, you know, at Vermilion Road, which is a part of the Shoppers Drug Mart. So that's like on a retail strip on Furmore.
Okay, but it's within a retail strip?
Within a strip, yeah, but the point is, there's the Regent Automall Dealers Association, which is, there's car dealerships and there's dealers in the same capacity. So the retail component is almost identical to the comparables that I have here.
Okay. And so just, you're using 1313 per square foot. That was from the board? Is
That
what you're-
was our model generated rent. And I'm asking for this estimate to be confirmed because the board confirmed our income, but they changed the cap rate.
Okay, all right, that's my questions, thank you.
You're welcome.
By changing the cap rate, Merritt, they brought the value down, but can you not go backwards from that value to get the actual rent that would be brought forward from that value?
You could.
Would it not make more sense to use the actual value and go backwards, or?
I'm just trying to be respectful of the decision that the Board of Revision made, and I want to be consistent with their process. So through our presentation, they felt that our rents were fair, and they decided to change the cap rate. So I want to be mindful of the decision that they had made.
Very good. Let's go on to your presentation, please.
Okay, thank you. I'll direct everybody to this brief here. It actually goes with each of the files today. Has all the, doesn't have a photo on the front. That's the easiest way to take it out.
Good.
And we can make our way relatively quickly through this. Just make sure everybody's got it in front of them there before I get going. Okay, so if you flip to the second page, basically this covers existing business assessment appeal decisions in this cycle, overturning the realty rental rate decisions on realty for 2018, as well as a number of articles specifically related to the automotive industry in Canada. So we'll just start at the top there. Number one, Canadian vehicle market review of 2016 by DeRosier Automotive. DeRosier Automotive is the main automotive consulting company in Canada that tracks stats for automotive dealers. If you flip to the information provided by them in this article, you can see that between the end of 2014 and the end of 2015, which is the time frame that we're talking about for subject property, the vehicle sales in Manitoba were actually flat. They declined ever so slightly, which is essentially flat. It declined by 0.1%. So the number of cars sold in Manitoba over that time frame did not increase. You're looking at a market that is not growing, it's level, it's stable. The second article following that by Scotiabank, Canadian vehicle sales forecast, merely confirms that information that the market was unchanged in Manitoba and was essentially flat. Following that, we have an article by CBC regarding the changes upcoming and ongoing in the automotive dealer marketplace. You can see that there's a number of moving parts within this industry. We have changes with regard to electric vehicles coming forwards. We have changes coming forwards with regard to self-driven vehicles. We have changes with regard to the distribution of vehicles where dealerships are being phased out and larger distribution centers are becoming the format where many fewer dealers are required in order to sell the same cars, as people do most of their shopping and comparing online now. So this will obviously have an effect on the number of dealerships needed and the value of that former real estate. Following that, we have an article in the Appraisal Journal, Introduction to Automobile Dealerships, and what I've highlighted in there is on the second page, it says, states, fundamental difference in the way that vehicles are marketed in Europe versus the US is that overseas OEMs sell to consumers directly without a middleman, i.e. a dealer. Some automakers in the US are seeking opportunities to have first-hand interactions with prospective customers and expose them to their products without forcing them to visit a dealership. This is the distribution center model, where you do your investigation and shopping online, and then you actually go and see the car at one considerably larger distribution center and pick your vehicle up there. Obviously, this would shrink the number of dealers required and have a significant impact on that real estate. Going back to the second page of that brief, I'm not going to walk you through the rest of this, but what I've done here is outline the decisions taken by the Board of Revision on business assessment appeals in this cycle, where the decisions were to lower the rental rate that was decided at the realty appeal to the levels shown. And you can see we're looking at $11.75, $11.50, $19 one, which is obviously a bit of an exception, and then a number of $12 decisions in the Waverly Auto Park. You're free to go through that. All the information is there for you. So what I'm illustrating by this is that there seems to be a consensus that the rental rates that were decided in the realty appeals on automobile dealers were not consistent with the actual value of those centers. So that's that brief. That holds for all of the properties presented today, and we can now get into the subject property itself. So we're looking at 1411 Regent. Again, built in 1986. This was an originally a full-line dealer. Obviously 6,600, 6,700 square feet is not adequate for a full-line dealership anymore. So this this property was phased out and became a used car dealer for the ownership. Obviously, it has a relatively, somewhat smaller front display area and offices with a lower level of finish than newer dealerships, and again, smaller service area and bay in the back. The land to plan area ratio on this property as well is also relatively small at 4.68 to 1. Typically for new automobile dealers, you're looking at a ratio of 8 to 1 and over, which those dealers require for the storage of the product to be sold, as well as storage of repaired vehicles, customer parking, and staff parking. There is no on-street parking available in this area of Regent. Moving on, there's a bit of a description on page number 3. The site is shown on page number 4. You can see that it's the left-hand portion of the overall site. And most of the display space is at the rear of actually at the rear of the building, which means that it's also not visible from the street front as you pass by. Location is key in in these matters in retail, and looking at the location of the subject. It's located in the area where the other automotive dealers are on that stretch of Regent. If you're looking at my page number 5 and the aerial. So as you head west from here, you run into the train line, which is quite clear on the aerial there. Beyond that, so we're going a considerable ways west here. Beyond that, you get into, obviously, the Kildonan places and the big box supercenters on both the south side of Regent and at Kildonan Crossing, etc. So the power center node is not where we're located. It's considerably to the west, and all of that supportive retail where you have big boxes and other retail conglomerating together is located together for a reason. They're not down here on this portion of Regent, and them being a kilometer or 2 kilometers away has no impact on what rental rates will be on this stretch of Regent. If they were interested in being in this section of Regent, they would be there, but obviously they're not. While we're on that topic, I didn't go through it in detail, but I'll just address it now. Looking at big box and other national brand, large national brand retailers in comparison to automobiles is just not appropriate. If you look at the brands that we're looking at here, we're talking about Canadian Tire, Sears Home Store, Shoppers Drug Mart, Dollar Tree, Marshalls, Winners, Sobeys, Staples, etc. So if you walk into a typical Canadian Tire or other big box store, the vast majority of that real estate will be selling floor, and in many instances in big box, certainly looking at Canadian Tires and others of that ilk, the selling floor is where the storage of product is done as well. So you have racking where product is stored significantly high on the floor, and the actual service area or storage area is very minimal in these places. So the majority of your real estate is actually selling floor. You're going to produce a much higher volume and income on a space where you're selling out of the majority of it versus one where you're only selling out of a small portion of it. Also leads to a much smaller portion of that area being simply designed as storage or service. So if you look at the service areas of automobile dealers, the typical split would be 30 to 40% showroom / office, with the balance being in service at the back. So the lower finish is a much higher percent of the actual automotive dealers than it would be in these particular centers. And beyond that, the income generated out of these big box centers is obviously significantly greater. Yes, and they do pay higher rents because they're able to pay those rents based on what they're generating out of their businesses, and because they're all conglomerated together. So that is my commentary on that. Move beyond to my page number 6, the automotive review. I believe I've covered relatively thoroughly at the top of page number 6. We've talked about distribution centers and the move towards those, reducing the number of automotive dealers. Online selling by Amazon is in place in Europe for the automotive industry, and is being looked at for North America. Obviously that would change things dramatically in terms of pricing and product delivery. And I've already discussed the flat line of automotive sales in Manitoba. So moving on to valuation for the subject, my page number 7, and probably only run through this once hopefully today, so we don't need to cover the same ground over and over. The comparables that I've presented are used to frame an appropriate rental rate for automotive dealers in Winnipeg. Obviously, there's exceptionally few arm's length transactions for leases in Winnipeg. The one that has been confirmed is a very low rate at an inferior location at $7.50 a square foot at 2554 Portage Avenue. Arm's length transaction in place there. I'm not saying that $7.50 is the rate that the majority of these dealers should be at, but that is really the only arm's length automotive dealer lease that is in the marketplace. So our task is to appropriately frame what the rental rate should be for these places. So what I have done is present retail properties, or properties that are in a retail location, similar to the subject, that have majority of the property being showroom space, or a significant portion of the property being showroom space for retail sales, as well as either industrial or storage space forming the balance of the leased portion of that property. And so that's one side of the equation. The other side is the automotive repair part, and we've also provided details on rents for those. So that's how we're approaching determining an appropriate rental rate for these properties. Looking at page 7 at the top, the 2016 Business Assessment Appeal was heard by the Board of Revision, and rental rate of $11.50 a square foot was decided upon. Just for background information, and again, we have a level market for this type of property. Looking at market leasing, my chart is on page 7. The first 7 properties form the showroom portion. So looking at the top 2, we have 400 Fort White Way. As you travel down McGilvery, just past Costco, you'll come to a new modern flex warehouse office retail development, where a significant additional amount of development is also occurring. In this location, we have Enns Brothers in for just over 11,000 square feet at $11 a square foot. We have Sky Zone. If anybody has kids or grandkids, they may probably have been to Sky Zone. It's a trampoline kids entertainment center. $11.90 a square foot for 25,000 square feet. Following that, 996 Lorimer is located, pardon me, just off of, is it Duff Roblin, or what do they call it there, the former Wilkes. It's a modern high cube flex space where virtually all of the tenancies are retail or office in nature. We're looking at Dynasty bathrooms there for 5,000 square feet at $13.10 a square foot. Significantly superior location and development to the subject. 1290 Kenaston is located directly adjacent to where the new Mercedes dealership is on Kenaston Highway. We have two leases there, TransCanada Brewing for 15,000 square feet and Lux Barbecue for 9,700. Completely renovated in 2015, was formerly purely industrial, completely gutted and renovated. We have rents of $12 and $12.50 there for very prime real estate fronting on Kenaston, right near the power center of a retail nature. After that, 2 properties on Waverly, 1036 Waverly, Superlight Lighting, and the Floor Show. Both of those leases are have a significant portion of the front being showroom retail space where you walk in and it's all the product of those particular businesses for display and for sale, with warehouse space in behind it. So, and those are in at $6, that being the low end. So we're looking at rates between $6 and $13, and most of those are significantly better locations than the subject property is. So moving into the automotive repair aspect, you can see my rates as shown there, with a number of locations. 410 Oak Point Highway is a Fountain Tire, $11.18 a square foot for 8,800 square feet. 2554 Portage Avenue, as I mentioned, is Birchwood Credit Solutions. They're in at a rate of $7.50 a square foot for a building that has been renovated. Originally built in '63, so it is inferior to the subject. I would skip number 10, the 1777 Ellis, that was meant to be taken out. And then we get into collision centers. So we have 2535 Inkster, east side, or yes, 2535 Inkster, 20,000 square feet. East side collision, $8 a square foot. Boyd Auto Body on Portage Avenue, 2014 lease at $10 a square foot. Some older leases for automotive dealers. Winnipeg Hyundai, back in '09, had a lease at $10.13, which was arm's length as of that time frame. And we have McDougall Auto Sales. Again, these are They're not in business anymore, but at the time in 2012, they had an arm's length lease of 1109, 3636 Portage Avenue, Ford dealer, 09 sublease at $9.16 a square foot, used auto dealer at 3081 Portage, who went out of business within 2 years, I believe, after this, at 3081 Portage Avenue, $9.32 a square foot. That facility sat vacant for a significant number of years and has only recently been released to another used auto dealer, Platinum Auto Sales. And finally, Pembina Chrysler back in '06. Now, I'm not placing any reliance on these rates as being appropriate for today, but you can see that rental rates for these are lower than what one would typically see for retail centers. Finally, at the bottom, collision centers, we have small center on Pembina Highway, Southside Auto Body at a rate of $9.25 a square foot. That's right at the corner of Bison Drive and Pembina. And then two Boyd Auto Body leases, again, a bit older, $7 and $9.28, a bit below what we would expect to see today. So all of that information taken into consideration, we have a undersized automotive property at 6677 square feet, much smaller than would be useful for mainline automobile dealers today, wouldn't even be considered. So essentially you're looking at one use, that being used car sales, which it is being used for. The size of it does take it out of consideration for full-line dealers, but it does also lead to economies of scale. So we have used a rental rate of $11.50 a square foot based on all of this information. And if you look at the decisions that I presented, that's certainly in line with those decisions taken. So $11.50 a square foot, our expenses are the same as the city's, and this gives us our resultant ARV of $91,260. And the addenda materials simply include the 2016 decision supporting the $11.50 rate. And I'm open for questions.
Mayor?
Thank you, Trevor, for that presentation. Out of curiosity, it was like 23 minutes, just over 23 minutes.
So I did well then.
Anyway, so I'll try to focus on all the questions, and I won't ask these questions over again, so I'll try to cover them all this time around. Your first comment, or one of the comments that you had made, you said visibility was an issue for this property on Regent, that people couldn't see it from Regent Avenue. Did I hear that correctly? Because that's what I heard.
Sorry, that's a slight misinterpretation. You can certainly see the property well from Regent. It's
Okay.
if you look at the site plan, the majority of the display of vehicles is to the rear of the building itself. So Regent, if you look at page number 4, the building is close to the front, and the majority of the vehicle display is actually at the rear of the site. So
But
you can see what I'm showing.
But most car dealerships don't usually have more than one row of cars in front of their buildings, because as we go through a lot of the car dealerships here, it's not uncommon for them to only have one row of cars in front of each, in front of the building.
It's not a significant point. It's simply.
I just want to make sure, because I heard that, and then I just wanted to double check to make sure that I was correct with that.
The visibility is
So
fine.
what's the target market for all the car dealerships on Regent Avenue? Who are they trying to sell cars to?
They're trying to sell cars to the east side of the city.
To the east side of the city? And where would the majority of the people live in the east side of the city?
Well, that would vary significantly. They could live in Sage Creek, they could live in North Kildonan, Transcona,
Okay.
Elmwood.
Okay, so Transcona. And if a person lives in Transcona, would you say Transcona is a pretty large area in terms of population density with a lot of people living in that area?
It's as large as most
Okay.
regional neighborhoods in Winnipeg.
Okay. And what is the major thoroughfare taking people from downtown to Transcona? How would they travel?
Well, they would obviously go down Regent Avenue.
Okay. And because you're saying that the subject property is inferior because it's so far away from the retail centers, but if there's only one way of traveling from Transcona to downtown, would that not be a misleading statement to make?
No, it's not, and I can certainly explain that. My comment with regard to it being inferior to the big box centers as presented, and I thought I'll try and be more clear about this, I guess, is the big boxes and the retailers that locate within power centers and regional shopping malls and Costco's that are adjacent to it, etc. They conglomerate for a reason, in that people go shopping and they want to do all their shopping in one location. So these power centers group those retailers together and driving more sales for those retailers and obviously enabling the owners of those properties to charge greater rental rates. So the rental rates that are charged in that location bear no relation to this location 1 to 2 kilometers down Regent from there. It's not that it doesn't have the same traffic, it does, but it's not in any way comparable to those centers.
But would you say the distance between the car dealership and the power centers is equivalent to the distance between, say, the IKEA and, say, the Canadian Tire and the Winners that's on Keniston Highway? So I think that distance would be even smaller than what we have here with this subject property, and yet those rents are in the upper teens, which are significantly higher than what you're asking for today.
So if I understand your question,
Yeah.
you're comparing the distance between IKEA and the power center at McGilvery and Keniston?
Yeah, because the distance, that's probably maybe 1 or 2 kilometers.
Okay, so with relation to that, and if you look at the IKEA area now at Keniston and what is Wilkes called there now these days?
Streamline place maybe?
It's
Yeah.
become a retail node of its own. There's a massive outlet center built across the road. To the west of it, there's 2 other centers that have been built. But dealing with IKEA on its own, IKEA is an entity in and unto of itself. It is a destination all on its own. It was, you were here at the time when IKEA came to Winnipeg. Obviously, it's an enormous deal. They considered it for a decade or more before deciding to come here, and they select and build their site, and essentially people go to wherever they are. So comparing IKEA and the distance from it to the others doesn't work. And in fact, if you look at the area around IKEA now, it has essentially turned that entire area into retail because of the draw that it has. So it's the same idea as other power centers. Retail draws retail.
But there were higher market rents in the Keniston area before IKEA existed that were in the mid to high teens,
Correct.
okay? And so,
And if you look at the rental rates in the area surrounding IKEA now, I imagine they're significantly over that.
okay, so is there any reason why you didn't take any comparables that were in the northeast quadrant of the city of Winnipeg,
I simply
which is close to the subject property?
I just didn't have any that were appropriate. What we were trying to show was showroom type space with additional storage or / warehouse, and the majority of those properties, or the ones that we had access to, and the majority of them were not in that northeast area.
Okay. And so your 2 comparables on Fort White Way, is that within the city of Winnipeg?
It is not. It is steps out of the city of Winnipeg. So as you head down McGilvery and past the train tracks and just past Fort White, you'll come to this very modern, built in 2012 flex space building that is used primarily for office or quasi-retail, such
So
as the ones that we provided.
It would be an inferior location then to the subject properties that we're dealing with today on Regent, would they not be? In terms of
I
traffic
think-
count? Because
In
usually,
terms of traffic count, absolutely, yes. I would agree with that statement. In terms of the location being inferior, probably
and
not.
wouldn't the land value be significantly higher on Regent than it would be in purchasing it on Fort White Way?
We're not really looking at land value today, and I didn't do
But-
that comparison,
yeah.
but as you look at that area of McGillivray, it is essentially where all of the development in Southwest is happening now.
But it's not a fair comparable to traffic, a property that's on Regent. If a business had an opportunity to be on Keniston or on Fort White Way, they would choose to be on a busier street 9 times out of 10.
Well, I mean, that's certainly one aspect. We also have a building built in 2012, very modern, very good amenities, and we have Sky Zone going in there on a long-term lease at $11.90 a square foot for just under 26,000.
Yeah,
That's a
but-
major.
I have a lot of
Retail.
comparables. I have 39 comparables in similar retail locations that are
Wow.
significantly higher than 1175, that are more comparable
Wow.
to the subject property than,
I don't really want to get into arguing,
Okay.
so I think I've addressed the
Okay.
big box aspect and the retail aspect, but we can talk about it if you want.
okay, why would you include comparables that are 10 years away from the reference date?
Well, as the city is aware, having arm's length automotive dealer leases these days is extremely rare because most of them are owner occupied. So what I've done is provide background on on older automotive dealer leases, showing what rates were, and the majority of the leases that I provide, with the exception of those specific automotive dealers, are modern. And I did actually notice that some of yours dated back to 2010 as well, so we're not really all that different in that fact.
But I think my comparables are more reflective of the subject property than yours. But that's my opinion.
Fair enough.
Yep. What was, you had mentioned the lease at 2567 Portage Avenue,
54,
54. And what was the board decision lease on that?
$9 per
$9,
square foot.
okay. When we're looking at the value of real estate as of the reference date, are we foreshadowing into the future, or are we actually looking at what the current value is as of that date?
We're looking as of that date.
Okay. So when economic conditions were favorable during the 2016, 2014, and even the 2012, when we were moving away from the reduction, were you asking for a higher market rent or a lower market rent than what we have here today? Because during those periods of time, car sales were booming, monetary policy was easing, and the economy was growing at a rapid level.
So you're taking us back in time here with your question, but as I showed in my brief, car sales for 2014 and 2015 were level. They were flatlined essentially. So if you go back to 2016, the information we were looking at was 2013 and 2012. So your time frame is slightly off there.
But you and I have gone through this exercise in the past where I've provided documentation where car sales have increased quite significantly. So that's neither here nor there. If this are the Chipmans significant players in the Winnipeg auto market?
I think that's a well-known fact. I'm not sure what that specifically
Okay.
has to do with dealing
Okay.
with the realty.
You'll
that we're
understand.
dealing with today.
So they are knowledgeable in the car dealership market, and so are they worried about the future trends of real estate values
They
going
have
down?
concerns.
They have concerns? So during the past 5 years, they've taken many permits to expand their operations. They've purchased car dealerships in the past 5 years. They've expanded. And so to me, if they've spent all this money where they've been investing in car dealerships, that would contradict the reduction in value that you're seeking today, would it not?
It would not, and I'm glad you brought that up, so let's address it. So there's two parts there, right? There's the acquisition of dealerships, and then there's the reinvestment in the existing ones. So reinvestment in the existing buildings, automotive brands, so take whichever one you want, Ford or Honda, or it doesn't make any difference. They have a cycle where they require their automotive dealers to reinvest in their buildings in order to reflect their current branding. So they change their brand and their style and the finishes and the exteriors that they want. They want a particular image to be projected, and this changes on a regular basis every 5 to 7 years. And as a dealer of that brand, you are required to invest that money to change the dealership to represent their brand, or you don't retain the dealership, they move it on to somebody else. So the reinvestment is not specifically driven by them and their wanting to reinvest in the properties because they feel they're great real estate. It's driven by the brands and the retail. The second point being the acquisition of dealerships. There hasn't really been any acquisition of dealerships by the Chipmans in the Winnipeg marketplace. They have purchased other dealerships, but the way that this industry and most industries now work is conglomerate. Well, what's the correct word? Agglomeration. You have to grow in order to survive. So the bigger automotive dealers take over other ones and get larger in order to compete, and they drive out the smaller ones. So it's simply a function of how business works.
So by expanding and spending all this money on reinvestment, would a wise businessman be spending money on reinvestment and upgrading and expanding their footprint if they're losing money? Because if they're losing money and it's a losing acquisition, why would they be doing that? Because they had purchased Keystone Ford recently. They've been opening up used car dealerships where they've been selling more used cars. They've been spending money on expanding their footprints. So this is all telling me that despite what you're saying, there are reasons for them to, because if they were losing money, Trevor, they wouldn't be spending this money on real estate, on expanding their footprint in the city of Winnipeg. And if a person's expanding or getting bigger, that means that the values are increasing.
Is that a question, or?
That's an observation. So what I asked you, so the question is, if this is such a losing proposition, why are they expanding their footprint within the city of Winnipeg?
Well, okay, and I have answered this, but just for clarity, I'll do it again. I never stated that they were losing money.
Okay.
That's your supposition that you're putting out there. I never suggested that they're losing money. What I stated was the state of the industry and how it operates. Yes, back in 2011 or 12, they bought the Ford dealership on Regent, and they have acquired some very small used auto centers. Yes, they have done that. Not denying that. They haven't bought any major brands in recent times, as it hasn't been a possibility. And again, as I stated, and I'm fairly sure the board is aware of this, how modern business is working, and this is kind of across all industries. The bigger fish are getting bigger, and the smaller fish are getting put out of business. And in order to not become a small fish, you have to continue expanding and growing your business. So it's not that they're seeing significant expansion in their auto sales. As we see, it's essentially flatlined in the marketplace. They're simply responding to how business is done. So I'm not saying they're losing money, but they're not
But what you're s-
seeing a vast green field with acres of money to be made either.
Oh, what you're saying, so in terms of real estate value, this is my last question, is that they're expanding their footprint, they've bought some existing dealerships, yet you've provided documentation saying here that the car dealership's gonna become the way of the dodo bird because people are not wanna test drive their car, they don't wanna see what the car feels like. That's a key component because purchasing a car is not an investment, it's an emotional decision and it's a practical decision, from point A to point B. So if the Chipmans, what the Chipmans are doing, it contradicts what you're presenting here today, is it not?
No, it does not.
Okay.
So, there's no time frame, obviously, on the information that I was presenting. Obviously, things can move either very quickly these days, as it does in some industries, or it can take a while. But the expansion that they've done is minimal. The dealerships that they've had for years and years and years. The one expansion was the Ford and some very small used auto centers. So there is no significant expansion here. We're not looking at an owner that's popping up new dealers all over the place. And let me answer. If these changes come to pass and less dealers are required and distribution centers become the way, who do you think is going to get that distribution center? Is it going to be Mr. One Dealer on Regent Avenue, or is it going to be the largest dealer in the city that gets the rights to have the distribution center? Well, as an astute operator, you're going to want to be in that position, right? So they're simply responding to how smart business is done.
But you and I both know that the car dealerships within the city of Winnipeg are an oligopoly. They're controlled by maybe four or five major players. And they all have significant footprints. If you're looking at the Dolari Group, you're looking at the Coaching Group. Okay, no other questions, thank you.
Susan, do you have any questions?
I guess I'm trying to sort out when the Board of Revision made their decision, it was on the larger dealership, it was on the building, and now
You're on the wrong sheet.
The 2016 one?
You're on the right sheet.
You're looking at the back of my brief in the addenda?
yeah,
Yes.
page
the-
8.
No, that's the city's paper. You're
Oh.
Wait a minute.
I'm sorry, yeah, the city.
I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong one myself, I apologize.
Maybe, I'm sorry, maybe I should have asked Merrick.
No, that's quite all right. So at the back of my brief, the 2016 business assessment appeal that I presented there was strictly on 1411 region. So it wasn't both properties, it was 1411
Okay,
region.
I'm sorry, what page are you looking at?
The addenda materials? Or,
Are we looking at this one here with the picture?
yeah, so on the 1411 region brief,
Yep.
at the very back of the brief, there's, at least I think this is what you're referring to. The decision for the 2016 business assessment was based on 1150, on the evidence that I presented, and it was strictly on 1411 Regent.
Okay. All right, that was my question, thank you. Now, Peter?
No, Robert?
Yes, I think Merrick was getting on this partially, but for clarification, there are other dealerships in this area.
There are.
Because you were talking about power centers and how far they are from the power center, but would you agree that it's more advantageous to be next to other car dealerships rather than a Canadian Tire or Mark's Work Warehouse or something?
Well, certainly as an auto dealer, typically auto dealers do cluster together, and you do find that on the Regent Avenue location, or you have specific auto parks, as we are all well aware of. But what I was stating is, and our purpose here today is essentially to decide on rental rates, right? So to compare the rental rates that you drive for national brand, big box retail in power centers and other similar agglomerations of retail, the rental rates that you drive there are not at all appropriate to what you would expect to drive on an arm's length basis for an auto dealer down the road, and that's the point.
Okay, thank you. Also, when you were talking about comparing it to the different types of businesses that have been submitted for comparables, you said that we talked about the size of the storage area being larger in some areas, in some types of businesses. But here, they wouldn't, excuse me, they wouldn't necessarily have storage area, they have service area at the back where they're actually making money on their service area. Is that correct?
Yes, so the service is servicing the cars, so it is an income generator. And I guess my point was more towards the structure. It's not that you make money off of the storage component, it's simply that if you go into a Canadian Tire, 90–95% of that building is going to be selling floor and display space. And most big box retailers are like that. So you're generating income off the majority of that building. So if you look at the showroom space in an auto dealer, it's 30–40%, including office space. And then you have the balance as being the lower finished but still income generating service area.
Okay. Lower finish, but hasn't it been said that the service area generates more income than the sales area? I've heard that before.
It would depend on the dealer, but certainly it can. And again, to my point, in comparison to the retail leases that are presented here, the income generated in those centers is going to be considerably different than what you're going to generate on an automotive dealer, inclusive of the service component.
Okay, and for the record, there was talk of the Chipmans, but this says owners are Carla Trade Center. Is that one and the same, or?
It is a company that they own, yes.
And on page 7 of your brief, where you were going through the comparables, there's 3 of them that are from 2016. I see, and there's only 3 of them from 2016. And they're all the 3 highest, so would you agree with me that the newest leases are maybe the better ones?
No, not necessarily. What I was presenting is as there aren't a vast number of arm's length auto dealer transaction or leases out there, we don't have a lot to directly compare it to, so we have to frame it. So what I've done is show showroom type retail space in better locations. These are better properties in better locations. If you're going to be in on Keniston, on Lorimer, right by IKEA, if you're going to be on sections of, well, the Waverly one is slightly inferior as it's retail set in an industrial building with great visibility.
I understand that they're not all similar properties. I'm just sort of simply looking at the years and trying to figure why the highest ones are from the latest leases.
So we're looking at buildings built
Not necessarily
in...
the type of building or anything like that.
Building built in 2012, 2008, 2015. Obviously, better, newer buildings with better amenities in better locations are going to drive better rental rates. They're all much newer than the subject property or any of the ones we look at today.
Okay, that's one last question for the record. What age is the subject property?
1986.
Okay, that's all thank you, that's all my questions.
1986, sorry, let me just check that before.
That sounds right. 86 and 87.
I think I wrote it down, yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rob. Must say I enjoyed this debate you guys are having here. Let's, as we're, I mean, on your page, your second page, where you say automotive dealerships, board decisions, have you got any of the other rentals values that the city's got on the other dealerships?
Other BA decisions?
Not just BA decisions, other rentals that have been not challenged, or where they're at, or the reasons why they're not challenged?
Well, I know that not all of the automotive BA hearings have been held yet, to my knowledge. I believe there's still some coming up. What by and large occurred in the realty decisions this cycle is that the NOI was typically left alone at the city's rate, and only the capitalization rate was changed to make any reflection in reduction of the realty. Now, we were in strong disagreement with that, as were the other agents, and I believe virtually all of those realty appeals were taken to the municipal board, where they sit now. As far as the BAs, the ones that I presented that I wasn't involved with were reduced. There was a number of other ones on that day where they simply 54-1'd the decision to move it on to the municipal board. Balance of that hearing, I believe, went that way. And I had a couple of properties which, for whatever reason, in the auto park, Point West, didn't fall in line with the other decisions in that park. And we are appealing those onto the municipal board as well.
The city said they're using their model to drive this rent. Are you aware of what's in their model? Because I haven't seen the model on the service stations, on the dealerships. Have you seen anything that's helping create that model that's driving a 1529?
I unfortunately don't get access to their specific model. We do obviously ask those questions, and as stated by Merrick and other assessors, there are virtually no arm's length automotive dealer rents out there to base it on. So I'm assuming that it is other information aside from strictly automotive that is used to come up with those, such as the retail rents presented and perhaps some other inputs, but that would probably be better asked of the assessor.
But if we take a look at what the city's done with, say, the 7-Elevens, they seem to put them all pretty much very close, unless it's in a real weird location. That rent value stays the same. If you take the Walmarts, they end up being the same type of rent structure throughout. They seem to pale them together. Are we not doing that with the dealerships at the city?
I see some fluctuation, I guess, in terms of the rental rates that are applied. You know, newer buildings, they tend to put a higher rental rate on, and older ones tend to have lower. But so they're, I don't know, in between the 13 and 15, 16 range is typically what we've seen. So it's not all, you know, have it all at one level, but by and large, the decisions that come out do reflect kind of a standardization.
But if the value has dropped during a board decision, would that not reflect upon what the actual rent receivable from that number would be? If you were to take what the board had dropped the value to
Yes.
and worked it backward, what do you come up with as a number? Have you ever done it?
The decision on
the realty?
on this property, on the realty, was based on a change in cap rates,
Right.
not on the
Rental, but
not on the rent.
if you took that number and backed it up, what would the rental value have been?
And used my cap rate. I did not do it in that fashion. And I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I could certainly do that exercise in the future, but they're two independent pieces, right? capitalization rate and the rental rate. They both speak to value, but they are independent of each other. So it's one means of getting to one place, but really both need to be addressed in the decisions.
But some people seem to think that cap rates can be a portion of your rental.
I would strongly disagree with that.
So would I.
The capitalization rate is not, it should not be used to.
And I disagree with that as
I
well.
know, I'm just,
The capitalization rate shouldn't be used to drive a value that exclusively. The decision should be taken on the individual portions based on the information presented, not to reduce the overall value simply to what you feel it should be based on just changing the cap rate, unless that's the only thing that is appropriate to change. You shouldn't change it to also accommodate for the rental rate.
good discussion. Thank you.
I just have one sort of comment.
Sure, you
with
wanna
regards to-
do a
Because you
summation?
shared it's not so much a summation, but when we look at the valuation process,
Yeah.
so you're asking about the model, right?
Yeah.
So we're looking at the size of the building, we're looking at the age of the building. Those are important characteristics as well that we look at when we look at the models here. And we do have challenges with regards to car dealerships. But when we're looking at the valuation process, so if you're looking at the value of the properties, what the tax agents do is they want to take a little bit off of everything. And what the modelers do, or what we do as an organization, is that we look at the vacancy, we look at the rents, we look at the cap rates. And all three of them are a part of the factor. And one perfect example of this is that I've had this and I've lost, but I want to be true to my system here. So the building on an OFB on Grant and Keniston. Our OFBs are the high rents, maybe, say if our model generated is $16.11, because I had this in 2016 and I remember it vividly. And what happens is that the vacancy for that building is very, very low. It's like either 100% vacancy or it's like 2%. But the reason why that vacancy, the reason why it's a good location, it's a good building, and it's below market rents. So what happens there, the tax agents still want our vacancy, but then they want to use actuals. But if you want to use actuals, then you have to also look at the actuals of the building, how it's performing. So if our model generated vacancy is 7%, and the building's performing at 2%, we can't have it both ways. And as a department and as an organization, what the city tries doing is we try looking at all the factors to create with the values that we're with. And so,
In summation,
okay, that's not my summation, but I just wanted to answer the question because you had it and Trevor had a different opinion and I wanted to share my opinion.
yeah,
Are there further questions for?
no further questions.
No.
You're done?
Just,
Well, you're not
yes,
quite
I'll-
done yet.
I'll wait for my summation in case there's a summation from the city.
Did you have a summation?
I think I'll do it similar to what it was last time I had it, I think last week or 2 weeks ago. There's a challenge in doing car dealerships and auto malls. All car dealerships are in excellent locations. Like not all excellent locations, but we'll get further onto this point later on. But what we've done here with the properties that we have this afternoon is they're all on Regent. So what the assessment department has done is if you look at the rents that we've provided as comparables, they're significantly higher than what we've shown here, what we're asking for today. If you look at my brief, the total weight is 69, the weight average is 1695. The total weight for leases that were signed between 2014 and 2016 is 1781. So they're not old leases. And with some of the comparables and all of my comparables that I've shown here, because we're dealing with business assessment, we're dealing with rents, these are significantly lower than our assessed values, our BA values, is significantly lower than what we've provided here today. So I honestly believe, due to the limitations that take place, I believe that our BA values should be confirmed as it is. Thank you.
Sure.
So I'm going to use my summation slightly differently. I think you've heard all of my arguments in detail. I won't need to cover those again. I'd just like to address the statement that was made with regard to how tax agents deal with value and look for a cut on everything across the board. I strongly disagree with that representation of how we do our work. I think it seriously undermines the process and the approach that we take, and you're painting everybody with the exact same brush, which I don't feel is appropriate. I certainly have comments on how some of the assessments are derived and the methodology behind them, but I'll save those to myself. Don't think we necessarily need to go through that, but I think it's important to point out that we're not here seeking a little cut on everything in order to lower the value. What we're seeking is fair market value. And if you want to get into it further, I'm happy to discuss the methodology behind arriving at these assessments and how the city's model is certainly skewed. But we can leave it at that, and I'm happy to move on to the next property.
Thank you very much. Can you take 5 minutes, please? Thank you. To order. And we'll be dealing with 1376 Regent Avenue. Merrick, when you are ready.
Sure thing. File number 174868. Business ID number is 31782. Owners are McGill Stevenson Company Limited, also as BKE Holdings Limited, but the actual business is Birchwood Kia. We have a total ARV of 196,140, using a premise area of 12,356, using an overall ARV with expenses of 1,587. We have two PIDs for this property. One of the areas is 7,548. The other one's 4,808. With total occupancy costs ranging from 16,878 and 9,761 to come up with a value of 196,140. You're asking for the value to be confirmed. My comparables that I'm showing here are similar to the ones that I had spoken of the last time around, so there's no changes. I want to be consistent. I chose comparables for the VSG portion of it to be within the northeastern portion of the city of Winnipeg. Page 2 are the same comparables that I had last time. Page 3 shows where it's located at. So it's actually diagonally across from the property that we last heard. The uniqueness of this property though is there's three different actual businesses on here. There's the Birchwood Kia, there's the Birchwood Auto Body Group, which we're going to be hearing later on, and there's also a gas station kiosk with a car wash, which is where the red dot is on page 3. Bottom of page 3 shows the curbside appeal of the subject property. The assessed value was, there was a hearing for this property on December 20th, 2017. The assessed value was confirmed at the hearing on December 20th. And this property is going to the municipal board in 2020. Page 6 shows the workup that we had for the property, just as an overview of how we came up with the value and the market rents. That concludes my formal presentation.
Questions?
All of your comparables are the same as in the last,
That is correct.
throughout the rest of the briefs?
Yeah.
Same as mine, I'm assuming. I have no questions.
Robert, any questions?
How many buildings are on this property?
Well, if you look at my brief, there's 3 different businesses, but the actual buildings, I think there's actually, you could almost say that there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different buildings. So if you look at the corner at Regent and Owen on the northwest side, that is like the canopy for the gas station.
Oh, okay.
And then what will happen is then directly to the south of that, that would be the convenience store, because this is a co-op. And then to the right of that is the car wash.
Okay.
Moving further south or towards Pandora, that is the Birchwood Auto Group, where they do auto body work. And on the right-hand side is where the subject property is, and that's the Birchwood Kia.
What was it? What was the last?
Birchwood Kia, which is what we're talking about right now. This is the car dealership. So on the most eastern part of the lot, where there are cars to the north and to the south of the building,
Yes. That's the Kia back there.
that's the Kia, yeah. But at
So where's the picture taken from?
the picture for page 3, that's from the front. That's
Regent
from
Avenue?
Regent Avenue, yes. Because you can see on the right-hand side, you can see the canopy a little bit for the co-op.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Trevor also has some good pictures, I'm guessing, as well.
And what is the two premise IDs? they take in all the buildings that were,
Yeah. I am guessing one of them is for the showroom, and one of them is for the service garage area. I've never inspected the property,
okay,
but
yes.
my guess is, my educated guess would be, the smaller area would be for the showroom, because their showroom doesn't seem to be that expansive.
There's no air conditioning on the
And there's no air-
smaller one, and the showroom would be air conditioned.
Yeah, so that actually contradicts what I'm saying here.
So maybe it's the other way around.
Maybe,
The showroom
maybe it
the
is the other way around, yeah. But just by
Okay.
looking at it, well, and you got, but in fairness, guys, because let's look on the second level here. If you look on Trevor's document on page 2, there's some office space on the second level. So even though the footprint may be smaller, there is office space.
Yes, okay.
So that's why, even though the footprint's smaller, because there's 2 levels, but Trevor could probably give us more information on that, because I'm sure he's been in this building.
Okay, that's all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Susan?
Just give me 1 second, please. No questions, thank you.
On your page 1, your rent comparables, are those all dealerships?
On page 1, no, they're all vehicle service garages.
Those are vehicle service garages?
Yep. So muffler shops, Fountain Tires, Midas.
So that would be equivalent with the
With the vehicle service garage, with the servicing
4,800
portion
square
here.
feet.
That is correct.
The one on McPhillips at 1150. 6,200. Which garage is that?
I do believe that's the Boyd Auto Group.
Okay. And the one at 226 St. Anne's Road?
That, there's 2 of them there. There's a Midas and there's a Mr. Lube. And this one's actually, this is the Midas.
That's the minor. And Henderson Highway?
The Henderson High, one of them's a Mr. Lube and the other one, one of them's a Midas and the other one's a Fountain Tire. And Vermilion's Fountain Tire.
Okay. On with your presentation. Trevor?
Okay. So this building was originally built in, beginning in 97, finished in 98. There was an addition done in 2009, that's what your 2 different areas are, I'm assuming. It was originally built as a Saturn dealership, and obviously Saturn went into bankruptcy, and the shipments had to, or the owners rather, had to find a new brand in order to go into that building. With the size of the building being too small for modern dealerships, they did have to add on to the building at that time to expand it somewhat, to add a component to it and bring it up to its current size. So, and there was also a bit of rejigging of the existing building, obviously with branding and removal of some display space at the front of the building. They used to have 2 sections that pointed out to display cars in, which are now gone. So it's essentially a refit of a building from 1998. If you look at the photos of the interior, it's relatively straightforward as far as dealers go. Not grand and expansive, or it doesn't have the finishes of what a Mercedes would, or a new dealership that would go up these days. And you've got photos of the showroom there at the back. So we're looking at total area, including mezzanine, of 12,356 square feet, and the mezzanine is office area in that location. We've included that in the value. Description of the building itself is there for you on 4 and 5 if you wish to go through it. With the subject property here, because it's all on one roll number, with the co-op gas bar and car wash, as well as the collision center, it's difficult to break out the land area for each of them. But if you look at my page number 6, and you look at the fence line at the rear of the co-op area and draw it straight across, which is essentially straight across to the east boundary there. That would is essentially how it's used, with the collision center having the south half of that site and the auto dealer having the front. The land to plan area ratio is well under the 8:1 that auto dealers look for these days, and indeed they do have to do off-site storage of cars in that area for their dealers, as there is not enough storage on site for their product in the modern marketplace. The location, again, shown on page number 7, it is on the south side of Regent, just to the east of Owen Street, in that automotive area. I won't go through my other description. With regard to the automotive industry, we've done that. I think we've probably gone through my comparables in detail, so I won't belabor that point again. With regard to the subject property, we're looking at an undersized property. Yes, it does have a Kia dealership in it. They were just getting going, essentially at the time in North America when they got put in there. So they were willing to accept the property with a bit of expansion and go into that facility. It is undersized for all brands typically at this point. It wouldn't be built again in this fashion. So if it were to be on the market for rent, you'd be looking at a used car dealer or some other automotive use that would go in there. Again, the decision that was taken on this property in the last cycle was at $11.50 a square foot. We're not seeing any change in that market, and we've applied $11.50 a square foot to the subject in this cycle. And if you look at the decisions that I've presented to you, this is certainly in keeping with those rental rate decisions by the board. The expenses are the same, so our ARV comes out to $168,830, and I'm open for questions.
Mayor, questions?
How important is land to building ratio with car dealerships?
Quite important.
So why would they expand the building by 4,808 square feet if it was very important?
Because they couldn't put Kia dealership in it if they didn't.
I see. So this
If you have 7,500 square feet, it's just undersized for any modern dealer. As you can see with the 1411 that we just went through, 6,600 square feet, it's not a full line dealer.
And is the Kia dealership the same, would they have the same portfolio of cars as a Ford dealership or a GM dealership?
In terms of the number of models, et cetera,
Yes.
it's probably slightly less, but their price points are also under what one would typically see for Fords, et cetera. So
Because Kias, they don't sell
it's
really.
a different market. So if you're looking at how much display space they need as much display space as other dealers.
Are they, because their product line's a lot smaller, so they don't sell luxury automobiles, they don't sell trucks, they don't sell vans. So I would disagree with that comment.
Well, that's fine, but
Okay.
again, we're looking at a dealership of what is it, 12,356 total square feet, including mezzanine. And we don't have an accurate land to plan, but if you look at the site plan there, we're probably looking at under 4:1, I would say, and on a building of that size. The storage is simply not adequate, and to that end, the owner has off-site storage in the area for.
I understand that, but they did decide to expand, so it's what you're saying contradicts, because if land to building ratio was of utmost importance, they wouldn't go through the expansion of 4,000 square feet or 5,000 square feet.
That is a mischaracterization of the process.
Okay.
The process is that they could not put a Kia dealership or any other full-line dealership
Okay.
in there without expanding and changing that building, which they had to do. Otherwise, they'd be operating a used car dealer, which is not obviously the best use for an automotive property.
And you're asking for the same market rent as took place in 2016?
I am, yes.
Okay, and were real estate values and market rates flat during the past 2 years within the Winnipeg cycle?
Well, we're talking about a specific market and the realty and the rental rates that are appropriate for that.
Okay, but you've seen my rents. No other questions, thank you.
Robert?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Susan?
I'm sorry, it's just, can you, it's probably been mentioned, but what portion is showroom and what portion is service?
Well, I don't think it's quite that simple. The service was expanded. So the original building would have been 7,548 square feet, and then it was expanded by 4,808, and I believe much of that expansion was service, but some of it, and I didn't bring the details with me, but there was some expansion of both components, I believe.
Okay.
What is interesting though, because I just know this as on Trevor's sheet here on page 2, there's 2 service doors that may help the board. So I think one of the service doors is for the showroom, and another of the service doors at the back is for servicing cars. So there's 2 overhead doors that I see.
It's just the interior one here makes it look,
Really small.
The service doors are on the, on the front are for, quick service, lube, et cetera.
Oh, is it? Okay, oh, at the very front.
If you go to many dealers have these quick serve side access rather than going
Oh, I see
into
that
the
too,
back
yeah.
for full service.
Okay, I didn't see that, thanks.
so
lube, et
they
cetera.
would do full service for Kia products, so would they not?
Oh, yes,
Here?
yeah, like if you look at my page number 3 in the back, that is the rear of the building and where the full service is. In the aspect that Eric was pointing out there, if you look at the front of the building at the top of page 2, there's drive-in service bays, so that's for oil changes, et cetera, things of that nature, tire changes, the quick things.
Okay.
Anything further?
Yeah, no, that I can ask her. No, that's it, thank you.
That's it. The entire property is owned by Carlo, right?
It is, yes.
Okay, so the back building, what did we say was in the back building in that,
It's the collision center.
that's the collision center for Kia?
No, it's a collision center overall for whoever wishes to bring their car in.
And it's operated by,
It's operated by Birchwood, but
it's operated by Birchwood?
yes,
Okay. The co-op lands, that's, what do you call that again? The plot, that's owned by Carlo as well?
the real estate it is leased out
It's leased out
on an
to,
arm's length basis to the cooperative.
and what do they pay rent for that?
I do not know.
Because nobody seems to have brought that forward.
No,
Nice.
we're not,
It's a nice piece of property, though.
well, the corner is the nice piece and that's why the co-op is there.
I'm just wondering why we don't have the rent on it, though. I mean, it's located right
Because
there.
it's a pad lease.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a pad lease, and if I recall correctly, and I may be wrong here, but I think it's north of $70,000, between $70,000 and $100,000 for the pad lease, if I remember correctly. Don't quote me verbatim. Because, well, you've appealed this, Trevor, right?
I appeal the property, but I don't appeal the cooperative.
Okay.
The co-op in Manitoba has their own representation,
that's
which
right,
I don't deal with, so that's why I don't have the information on the lease.
Yeah, but
Again, it's not what we're looking at. Our portions are the collision center and the.
Well, I realize that, I'm just saying, the rent on that pad lease might give us a reflection of what the land values are and the rental values are.
you know,
Appropriate to that corner site and the use that they make of it and, yes, term, et cetera, so I understand the point.
what's interesting though, if we, and this is just for realty purposes, right? So if we take the land area of 220,005 square feet times 30, that works out to $6.6 million just for the land value.
Why are we timesing that by 30?
Well, I'm just saying we're trying to establish what the land value is for that lease, for the leasable space. So I have the 2018 brief in front of me, and I'm just looking at what we had assessed that, what the potential land value would be worth. Because the business assessment and the land value, it's, like I said, it's all part of how we derive the income and what's being fair and reasonable.
They use the property for Kia all the way back, do they not, all the way up to Pandora? Because the body shop only uses the land to the west.
There is some combined use. So looking at my page 6, the body shop doesn't just use the land to the west, they use the area in behind too, and that is dedicated to them, but I believe there may be some storage of Kia product there, but all of those cars that you see are not new Kia product. As the auto body shop does use the majority of that. So it's not like it runs from Regent back to Pandora, that's not the case.
But I think what happens is the square footage for the auto body portion of it is just under 16,000 square feet.
Well,
Which
that's
is
how the
important.
city has broken it out.
Well, yeah, well, that's with the pits, right? Well, how we have for the incomes, for the income for that.
So you've got that land at the back, you've got that included in your number, is that correct?
For our value, yeah, so if you look at my brief on my cover page of page 6, we have a total land area of 220,005. And so that encompasses the entire land area of the 3 businesses that we have here.
Okay. So-
Including the co-op. That includes.
Yeah, that includes the co-op, that includes everything, yeah. So, because like,
So 1 Owen is, just to clarify here, so 1 Owen is the building itself, including small mezzanine area, is 15,000+ square feet. So to say that the land area for that section is 16,000 is not accurate.
I never said that the land area was 16,000.
That is what you said.
Okay, well, what I meant to say is that the building was 16,000 square feet, because it's 14,071 plus 1,575. And the total land area for the entire parcel is the 220,005 square feet.
Okay. We seem to be focused on the land here, so what I can tell you is that
The only reason I was focusing on the land is because you brought the land issue up. And I'm going,
the area,
Land to building
yes.
area.
Yes,
I'm going,
so,
hold on, there's 220,000. I'm trying to figure out of that 220,000, what was Kia's land? Because you
Yes.
have it, the planned area at 7.53, but that includes everything on all the property.
that is the entire property, yes.
So
So
co-op
the-
does not have the use of 7.5.
No, they do not, and you can
Okay.
see the fence
So
line.
you would have a greater land to area on that property than 7.53.
Depend-
On the one we're dealing with.
If you, follow the fence line
Yep. There's no fence there.
at the rear of the co-op. There is a
Yep.
fence
I think,
here,
Yep, there,
right?
yep.
No, there's no fence installed here, you're correct. The land dedicated to the Kia for their use by agreement is essentially to that line. Now, can they store cars here, and do they? I'm sure that they do at some time. But the collision center, the area to the west of it is customer parking and staff parking in that area, and then you have the cars that they're servicing located at the rear. So this is their storage, and so we're not looking at an area that runs from Regent to Pandora. We're looking at mainly that area, and if you want to say that they have some use of this, that's probably true, but all in all, the land to plan area ratio is going to be well under the 8:1.
It would be 110,000 square feet. And
Well, there's
that's more than 8:1.
no real way of estimating what that is. If you look at the building size and the site that we're looking at there, that would be under 8:1.
What I'm saying is, if you split the lot down, it's down the middle, if you look at the picture,
If you split the lot down the middle, yes, you are correct. You did it
110.
that way, but
That's what's usable to them, they own the whole thing. It's usable on that, they don't need it for the body shop.
So if we were to do that, they do need it for the body shop because they need it for the storage. And if you look at the cars there, they are the auto bodies. So if we look at it in that fashion, you're saying that essentially the auto body has zero storage, so we should
I wouldn't
have
say
some
zero.
massive discount on that.
I wouldn't say zero, they've got a fair bit.
We seem to, I know this is an
Digress?
important point, but it's not as being portrayed. They do not store Kia cars from front to back on this site. If you go there and visit it, the cars that are to the east of
No,
it
but-
will be cars for repair for the collision
But the
center.
reason I bring it up is you said they're short of land for a dealership in the future. That land, that full 110, could be made available for a dealership if they
It
so
couldn't
chose.
be, it couldn't because then the collision center would have no storage and they couldn't operate.
That,
Collision store,
you have a 16,000 square foot auto body shop, which is a lot of space, and you have car
I'm
storage
sorry,
space.
The questions are being asked of me.
Yeah, I just-
Kind of like to follow a little bit of process
Yep,
and not.
that's
not make
understandable.
somebody
Let-
judge.
let
It's
me-
just
you
that-
can- You can put it in your sum.
Okay,
I'm just trying to clarify it in my mind, that's all. Well, only because of that one statement that. 'Cause I got a bigger, anyway, I'll leave it at that. Anything in summation?
I just want to clarify the summation. My summation is similar to what it was last time. A clear example is we have Winter's Auto Body, which is slightly larger than the auto body shop here, and I digress, and we'll be discussing one Owen later on, because that's going to be 2 properties away. But in terms of Winter's Auto Body on Arlington between William and Logan is 21,000 square feet. And they, large auto body, and they store a lot of cars in their shop. So when you have a smaller auto body shop, they need to store the cars outside. So when we're looking at the subject property and following up on your point with the land to building ratio, you have a 16,000 square foot footprint here. And if I'm counting correctly, you could probably have about 25 cars on the, just where the fence is or where the line is, behind the co-op, and then the entire western portion, you have a fair amount of cars. Maybe it's 20 cars. But how much more storage do they need for an auto body shop if you got a 16,000 square foot building and you have 20 cars on that are being stored outside? And that's the only comment that I need to make.
Trevor?
My summation, and we won't go through the rest of it, but the land area appears to have become an issue. So if what I'm representing to you is accurate, the area that the Kia has dedicated to it is the area as described, which will be well under 8:1. If you were to nominally say, divide the property in half and say, we're going to ignore that and all of that other piece of land is going to be used by Kia as well because they have common ownership. You then remove any storage, with the exception of the storage in the front for both customers and staff and delivery people, etc. You remove any storage for a collision center where you take your car and leave it to be serviced. The cars are stored outside; they're not stored within the center itself. And if you were to remove that area from consideration as being dedicated to them nominally, they would have to have another site somewhere else in order to store those cars, and in order to operate, they would have to go and drive that car over to storage, then go and have somebody, have them bring that person back. When they're coming to service it, or when they're ready to service it, they have to go and get that car and bring it back and service it. It's simply not operable. That area is dedicated to the collision center. And the point is that the area dedicated to the automotive dealer is undersized, and hence Birchwood has off-site storage for new cars for the dealerships in the area.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
We'll move on to 1401 Region. Merritt, when you are ready.
Yep. File number 174848. Address is 1401 Regent. Business ID is 1938. It's the Birchwood Honda Center, which is actually the Honda car dealership, which is right beside the property that we dealt with at 1411 Regent Avenue. So the issues are it's the same building that we're looking at. And the owners are listed as Carlos Trade Center. Total ARV that we have for this property is 357,480. Total premise area we have is 25,944. Overall ARV is 1378. We have one PID of the 25,944. Our base ARV for the entire property is 1164. We have a showroom space of 8,000, or with air conditioning of 8,750 to come up with our total occupancy cost of 55,466 to come up with a total ARV of the 357,480, which we're asking to be confirmed. Front page shows my vehicle service garage rents, which are similar to what we have discussed previously. Page 2 shows the overhead of it. And so the area of the 25,944 is on the right-hand side of the red dot on page 2.
There's no red dot.
So there's the red dot, and it's on the right-hand side of it on page 2. Was it black and white? You know what? Sometimes they did color. So it's the building that's closest to Owen. That's the larger building of the two.
Can't even read Owen as Mega either. This is Owen.
Yeah.
That sort of goes off this way.
Yeah.
So it's the bigger building.
Yeah, it's this one here. And I apologize. Yeah.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because the little one was the first one that we dealt with.
Yeah.
Because the first one was this one here,
This
at
one here.
1411.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, the other one was the one we dealt with.
Yeah, because the smaller one was the used car dealership that also sold Hondas. Page 3 are my comparables that I used throughout. Page 4 shows the board decision that had taken place on December 20th, 2017, where they based the value using a 8.25% cap rate. Page 6 shows the original model using a cap rate of 7.75%, showing the two rents there of 1313 and 1164. That made our blended rate 1164. So pardon me. The 1164 is for the larger one completely, because we remember we talked about the two PIDs. So The entire PID for this space is $11.64. Because the 1313 is for the used Honda Center that we talked about 2 properties ago. And page 7 and 8, 9 and 10 show the breakdowns. So page 7 shows how that the property was coming into value using a cap rate of 8 1/4, which dropped the assessment from the 4.536 to the 4,261,000. Page 8 shows up the workup that we had used for that with the 2 different BA bids. And page 9 and 10 just show what the workups would be, just change the cap rates for the space of the 25,944. That concludes my presentation on 1401 Regent.
Further questions?
Yes, just a couple. This property, were you able to inspect it given time restrictions?
I actually have been in it just on personal stuff, not for work related.
Okay.
It's not a client of mine. I get different car dealerships every cycle.
Yeah, understood. And the other properties today?
The other properties, I've used the Co-op gas station.
Which isn't under the field. So the other ones that are.
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, thank you.
The Honda, yes, and the Go Chase, yes. And the Birchwood 40, yes, I've been to that one.
So looking at your comps on the first page, again, they're automotive service related, tires, lube, muffler, etc., right? They would all be considerably smaller than the subject property, correct?
That is correct.
And typically, with economies of scale, given all the things being similar, we'd see higher rents on those facilities, correct?
Usually that is the case.
Okay, those are all of my questions, thank you.
Susan?
For this hearing, what was the square footage you were wanting?
25,944.
And what was that for a rental rate?
$11.64.
$11.64. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, not including the occupancy costs.
1370 overall.
Yeah, I wanted, that's, 1370. Oh, that's my questions, thank you.
Robert?
What's going on page 9 and 10 again? You're using a rate of 1313?
So what I did on page 9 and 10 is, wow. I think I made a mistake on page. What I should have done, and I apologize for that, I should have used 1164 for that. That's my mistake.
Okay.
We have
you should do
deadlines,
that.
yeah, please disregard that. You're copying spreadsheets, you're working under the gun.
Okay, so you're using 1164?
Yeah, it's 1164 for my value. What I tried doing, because we have 3 different bids, or 2 different bids on this property, it is confusing, so I tried to break it down for it, but here I made an error in judgment, so I apologize.
No, that's good. That's all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, because on the front sheet, you used the 1164.
Yep. Yeah, on page 7, I used 1164, it was just an error.
Okay. On with your presentation.
Okay, 1401 Regent Avenue, if you look at my page number 5 to start with, you see the site plan. The original Honda building was the one on the west side, on the left side of that site, fronting Regent. The one that we've just dealt with, 1411, considerably smaller. Honda obviously was unwilling to continue operating out of that, and they were forced to build a larger one. So the larger structure was built in the 2000s, that being the 25,000 plus square feet on the corner of Regent and Owen. It's not a new building. It was built, I don't have the specific date, but it's certainly not a newer structure, and dates it back to that time period. The overall land to plan area ratio for that site is 4.7 to 1, obviously undersized for today's automotive dealer uses, and again, they have considerable off-site storage of product for both the used car and the full-line Honda dealer at that site, and obviously that's not the ideal situation, and it does impact their business at that location. The 2016 decision on this property was decided at $11.50 a square foot, and I've included that, pardon me, included that information at the rear. I believe it was $11.50. Pardon me. Didn't bring that note. Oh yes, it is $11.50. If you go through the workup. We're not seeing any real change in the health of the automotive market over that time frame. We're not seeing expansion. We're seeing potential for contraction in the future and other threats to individual dealerships. So obviously, there's some question as to how this real estate is going to be used over the long term, etc. That has an impact on value, of course. Today we're dealing with rental value, and to that end, I've presented my comps as we've discussed in detail on pages 8 and 9. As you can see, we've presented where properties with considerably superior locations with showroom retail space, with warehouse space associated with them for our first 7 to essentially try and frame that aspect. And the rates there are in the $12, $11, $13 range for that portion. And we've presented automotive repair and collision centers for the remainder of the comparables, essentially framing what a reasonable rental rate would be for such a property such as this. The rental rate that was decided in the last cycle was $11.50 a square foot. We were not in agreement with that, and in fact our rental rate was under $11 per square foot. 25,000+ square feet is what most modern dealerships are built as now. This one's considerably older, and our rental rates, we see it being appropriate to have a division between the larger dealers and the smaller dealers based on a number of factors, but size being a main one. Economies of scale, your larger ones would rent for slightly lower. So our rental rate of $11 is actually an increase over our rental rate from the prior cycle. Using that rental rate and the expenses, we have an ARV of $340,850, and I'm open for questions.
Merrick?
Yes. Just bear. So did you take the 2016 realty to the municipal board?
On Regent?
Yes.
Yes, all of the dealers on Regent went to the municipal board.
So it's outstanding right now. Was there a case management done on that at all? Or is that still outstanding?
It's still outstanding, yes.
Okay, I'm just curious, I didn't know. Okay. So, and what was the BA value again in 2016?
The 2016 decision was based on a rental rate of $11.50 a square foot.
Okay. And so you're asking for a value which is lower than that for 2018?
I have increased my rental rate from the prior cycle slightly. We weren't in agreement with the decision at $11.50.
Okay. And you're, okay. And so, when we had a hearing last week or a week and a half ago, you said the cutoff stage was 25,000 square feet, but at the hearing you said that there was no such thing as 25,000 square feet, so there's a bit of a contradiction from what I hear from 2 weeks ago to what you're presenting here today.
No, Mr. Frolik, you're mischaracterizing what I presented. I said there's no hard and fast rule as to what the rental rate would be. We're talking, obviously, we're talking theory here. We're not talking leases that are in the marketplace. As we all know, there are very few arm's length automobile dealerships. So the theory, the appraisal theory behind it, obviously, is if you have two properties with the same utility and all things being similar, one is considerably smaller than the other one and one is larger, economies of scale come into play. And in the marketplace as well, in other sectors, if you're renting 20,000 square feet or you're renting 5,000 square feet, there are economies of scale that come into play, and your net rental rates are going to be lower on the larger ones versus on the smaller ones.
So it's always changing and fluctuating then depending on the square footage.
There would be a differential, and somewhat it's, again, not a hard and fast rule. So I didn't say that this is exactly how it is that modern dealerships are built 25,000 square feet and up when they're built brand new. So that being the large end of the scale, and they go up to 40,000 square feet, etc. But if you get to 20,000 and under, we're talking undersized dealerships, and there is a difference in what those would rent for on the market.
I just remember getting an email from you in the past using that 25,000 square feet, probably in the 2014 appeal period, so that's why I'm referencing
It
it.
is somewhat acknowledged, yes.
Okay, thank you. No other questions?
Robert?
You're talking about the economies of scale, but you're also saying that 25,000 square feet is very nice for a dealership such as Honda that is a big brand like that. Would you agree that maybe there shouldn't be any economies of scale if 25,000 square feet, which this one is very good size for such a dealership?
No, and I understand your point. So what I was presenting there is the theory, and it's somewhat the theory of yes, as if you were to build a new dealership today, typically a full brand dealership is going to be 25,000 plus square feet. That's what they require. That's what they build. There are no leases out there on those, but as the buildings get larger, and you see this in other retail sectors as well as office sectors and industrial, the economies of scale come into play, and the rental rate that has to be charged on those is less, and less is supported by the tenancies as well. As you rent a lot more space, you don't pay the exact same rate as it would be onerous to pay 15 versus 10 or something like that if you were to rent 80,000 square feet versus 10,000 square feet, etc. It's just how the real estate works. In regards to automotive dealers specifically, yes, you would build larger ones, newer. So older ones that are smaller and undersized get phased out, and they become used auto centers essentially. So it's somewhat counterintuitive, but if they are arm's length, will pay more for those centers. It's
Thank
a
you.
different business model as well.
Yes, that's all my questions,
Susan.
Mr. Chairman.
No questions.
And I've got no questions. Let's move on to the next one, 13. Oh, anything in summation? I'm sorry.
I just want to understand the history here. Before I have a summation, Trevor, so which part of the building was built in 86 and which building was built in 2006?
The older building was the 86
Okay.
building, the smaller one.
So, okay.
1411.
Okay, thank you. I'll have my submission now. I want to confirm. So in 2006, the property owner decided to expand to build a 25,000 square foot car dealership, which is to meet the needs of Honda and to meet the needs of their business model of selling Hondas. So when they did that, they could have made the choice of building a smaller building to meet that land to building ratio. But for real estate purposes and for the business model, they chose to have a land to building ratio below industry standards of 8.1. So as we talk, and I acknowledge the 8:1 is a standard that's used and it's a guideline, but how it impacts the real estate value of what the building is and what the market rent is not necessarily a fastened rule that we need to make a significant discount. The market rent that we're using of $11.64 for the subject property would be on the lowest of our scale. This building, this 25,000 square foot building was built in 2006, so it's less than 12 years old. It would derive a much higher market rent. And in my opinion, this assessed value, the business assessed value is very fair compared to the other comparables that I did not discuss in my presentation for this property, but I didn't want to rehash the comparables that we already spoke about. Thank you.
Good.
So very quickly, we're not overly far apart in the end on this property, although we are 60 cents apart on rental rate. I acknowledge that. I do have to bring this up. There's a basic misunderstanding of the automotive industry and the real estate requirements, etc. The owner of the property did not choose to build a 25,000 square foot center for Honda in order to expand their real estate holdings and thereby get a smaller land to plan area ratio. They're told by Honda, you build us a new 25,000 square foot center or you're not our dealer anymore. So they have their site, they are required to build it, they build it, and that is then the land area that results from that. I think we probably covered everything in detail there. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next one.
Could I actually have a quick recess? I just gotta go to the washroom quickly.
Sure.
Thank you.
5 minutes.
Yeah, it won't be that, but thank you.
Call it back to order. We're going to be dealing with the property at 1300 Regent Avenue. When you're ready, Merritt?
Yeah, thank you.
Bring it down.
File number 174884. Business ID is 41190. Business name is Birchwood Keystone Ford. Owner is listed as BFR Holdings Limited. We have a total ARV value of $439,020. We have a total area of 32,425, and our overall ARV per square foot is 1354. The base rent is $1146. The air conditioning aspect of the building consists of 5,040 square feet, coming up with total occupancy costs of $67,436 to come up with the $439,020. My comparables are the same. On page 3, there was a board decision made for this property where they reduced the assessed value from $4,324,000 to $4,062,000, changing the cap rate from 7.75 to 8.25. Page 5 shows our initial assessment. Page 6 shows the revised assessment based on the higher cap rate. That concludes my formal presentation.
Questions, Trevor?
So I'm looking at page 2 here and the comparables shown. Looking at, let's say, Shoppers Drug Mart, or Sobeys, take your pick. Do you know what the amount of capital or what the tenant improvements would be in dollar terms or on a per square foot basis for those types of properties? The
When it
finishing
comes
up-
to market valuation for real estate, as per many municipal board decisions, we do not include tenant inducements
And that's fine.
into the valuation
I
process.
fully understand that. What I'm asking is, you're aware that there's significant tenant improvements that are required in building out many of these retail centers that you presented here? Is that correct? You're aware that they receive tenant improvements?
I can't comment on one of my comparables that I have here,
And
but
that's-
as through the valuation process, we
We
cannot
understand.
include that, so to me,
We understand.
it's a moot point.
We understand. The city also understands that, that the investment by the owner drives up the rental rate that that they need to charge in order to get their return on those properties. Is that fair to say?
But then there's also leases that are renewed,
What I'm asking is,
and when they're
are you
renewed
aware
at the
that's-
current rent, then that doesn't factor in the
Let's-
tenant improvements.
Let's move on. I have no questions.
Susan?
This was 32,000 square feet for this one?
Yep.
Sorry, just let me-
32,425.
no questions.
Thanks to the city. Robert?
This property here, the rental rate is $1146 and it's 32,425 square feet.
Yep.
The previous one was 25,9 something, and it was at 1164. Does the model have economies of scale built into it when it's figuring out?
I think what has happened for this one here is the higher rent. Does this one have the higher rent or
This
the
one
other one
has a lower.
This
one
is
has-
slightly lower, 18 cents lower.
So the reason why this one's slightly lower is because the age factor of the building versus, this building was built in 1986, so the effective age for this building is lower. It's an older building as opposed to the previous building where the majority of the building was built in 2006. So because the majority of that building was built in 2006,
Okay.
it would derive a higher market rent because it's a newer building.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
None on with your presentation, Trevor.
Okay, so just to the point that I was trying to address there, if you look at retail comparables that are presented by the city and the rental rates that are generated for them, aside from not being applicable because of location and all the things we've decided. I think it's useful to understand what drives those rental rates as well. So if you look at, a large number of these, the fit and finish, et cetera, that is there for a Sobeys or a Shoppers, et cetera, requires a huge amount of capital investment to bring it up to the standard that the tenant mandates that they have in order for them to lease that space. And that's money that's invested by the owner into that space. And that drives the rental rate on those leases up, and that's obviously reflected in the rent that they're paying there. They're in significant amounts of retail space here, yet they're paying still relatively high rental rates. Really not applicable to what we're dealing with here with today. Just wanted to make that clarification. Moving on to the subject property, 1300 Regent Avenue. Again, we're looking at a building built in '86, 32,000+ square feet. It's a significant size dealership. It is the Ford dealer on Regent Avenue. It's located further to the east than the 1376 that we dealt with earlier. And in this case, it does have a relatively good land to plan area ratio at 7.67 to 1, very close to 8. I wouldn't quibble that they have enough display and staging space, etc. They do, in fact, in this location. Your building itself, built in '86, is less representative of what would be current in today's market. So if you were to take two similar buildings, one built much more recently and this one built in '86 in the style and configuration that it is, the rental rate on the newer building would typically be higher if all other things being equal. If you look at the interior of the space, yes, it has been upgraded since 1986. We're not looking at the same color choices, etc. But overall, the height of the showroom area and some of the display, etc., is not really of the standard that one would see for typical ones. I'm not saying it's awful. I'm just saying there are gradations in properties that you see out there, and all of this comes into play in arriving at market value or ARV or rental rate. So, subject has a plan area of 27,385 square feet, and then it has mezz office of just over 5,000 square feet for a total of 32,425 square feet. The description of the building is there for you. The aerial on the front actually gives you a good indication of showroom / office at the front with the much larger service area at the back. And in fact, in between, there is also some service area there as well. So a large degree of service area for this property. The location, again, just adjacent to 1376, further to the east. I won't cover our comparables, etc. Suffice it to say, we have an older building here. It is in need of upgrading essentially to modern standards. The comparables that are provided guide us towards a rental rate of roughly $11 per square foot. It could be under that. We have raised our rental rate from the last cycle to $11 per square foot for this size. And using the $11 per square foot, we come to an ARV of $424,110. And again, the decision taken in the last cycle was very close to that at $11.15 a square foot. open for questions.
Merrick?
Trevor, when you come up with market values, what's your error margin? Coming up with a value, like, so if you're, like, if you have a range of values that you believe which would be reasonable?
Certainly you look at the subject property that you're dealing with and you compare it to true rental rates on the marketplace or a means of arriving at a true
Okay.
rental rates for it and establish a range and
So
place the property.
you have an error margin, so would you say plus or minus 10%?
I would not say that, that's more of an assessment
Okay.
modeling, and we don't do it in quite the same manner. It's,
So would you say that you're,
we do recognize that there is a range out there.
and what would that range be? Would it be, would 5% be more accurate?
It's a professional judgment, and you're asking
Okay.
me to state a specific range that we don't apply, so it's not fair.
Okay. So, we're only 3.5% off the market value RARV of $439,000 and the value that you're asking for of $410,000. Would your, or $424,000. So would, to me, that doesn't seem very significant in terms of why would you appeal it if it's so close?
Well,
Because it's literally $15,000.
let's be clear about this. We're not talking about, we're talking about fair value to the ownership or the business owner, right? And pardon me, the decision that was taken in the last cycle of just under 420,000, we have increased our rental rate and our overall ARV and brought the value up to where we see it being appropriate. We don't have a function where, well, it's within 5%, we don't need to appeal it. Is that where it should be at? And that's why we appeal it. I mean, in that regard, you could suggest that, well, there's been decisions in the last cycle taken by the board, perhaps, we should assess it on that basis too.
Yeah, well, when the board does make a decision, you tend not to respect their decision anyways, which is why sometimes we're here on that. Is that not true?
If I disagree with the decision that was taken with regard to whatever aspect we're appealing, then yes. If the market knowledge and experience that we have shows that it's inaccurate, the decision taken, then we appeal on, and that's why the legislation is such as it is, and there's 2 levels of appeal, and I don't think the board feels in any way badly if we appeal their decisions.
Okay. No other questions?
Maybe I should have stated that another way, but I mean, that's the process. If it needs to be appealed, we appeal
I'm pretty
it.
sure they have a thick skin.
Rob?
Just one question. This building was built as is in 1986, no addition since or anything?
There has been an addition at the rear of the site. I don't have the date or the size on it, but they have expanded the service area of the building, certainly.
That's all my
But
question.
it's not recent.
Thanks.
Susan?
Do you know the percentage of display area, like actually selling of new cars compared to the
The
servicing?
service. I do not have that breakout. However, in logical terms, if you look at the aerial on page 1, the display space and office space runs roughly halfway back that one cohesive building at the front. There's an area behind the front showroom where there's some office and there's also service in there. So the building at the back is service as well as some portion of that middle area. So it's a much smaller showroom office versus many
Parts department.
parts as well, yes.
So it's mostly devoted to servicing, is what I'm sort of getting at.
A much higher percentage of it than normal, yes.
Okay. And you're saying there is a difference between pure service rental value and showroom rental value?
Yes.
What was your two differences? Like,
You
what
would-
did you say your servicing was for pure servicing?
Well, for service, service and collision centers and things of that nature, our rental rates that you see in that, in that area are typically 8, 9, 10, up to 11 at the very high end for smaller service centers. And then you get into the, lube centers and things of that nature, which have higher rents. But for auto body repair and collision, it's $10 a square foot typically.
Okay, thank you. That was my questions.
You've been in the building,
I have, yeah.
the mezzanine,
I forgot, pardon me?
the mezzanine.
Yes.
Nobody ever talks about that mezzanine.
It wasn't brought up.
Well, it's 5,000 square feet of space.
Yes.
What's it used for?
There is some storage and there is some office area in the mezz.
Office for
For the dealership,
but for the shop, correct?
mainly for the shop, yes.
Isn't that where the tower is?
Yes.
They watch the,
Yeah, if you look at my page 3, I guess it doesn't actually show it.
doesn't show any pictures of it.
Unfortunately, it doesn't show it, but if you look at, yeah, there is, much of the mezz office is devoted to
Storage.
Space One with storage as well as, I think there's the change room and things of that nature up there.
The lunchroom.
As I recall, lunchroom. That's what we're looking at. I didn't walk through it last week, but you're bringing it back to mind, yes.
It's just an awkward space because of the way it's set up, but
Mhm.
there's no external windows to
No.
this portion. It's facing the shop.
So do certain brands take bigger service areas?
Yes.
I do think it varies, but certainly, it can vary, yes.
Sort of cut in, Mr. Chairman.
They also have a different, they got their 16 stalls for service, but then they've got 6 bays for just washing the cars and doing their cleanup for their used cars and new cars, so. We won't go there. I'm done with my questions. That concludes 13.
I actually got a summation.
Oh, you got a summation?
Yep. Sorry, I apologize. I just, important consideration when looking at vehicle service garages is Trevor's comparables for vehicle services garages on page 9 are leases that are very, very old. 2007, 2008, 2006, and they're auto collision centers. What we've learned, because the segment of VSGs are very, very narrow in focus, in my analysis, market rents for auto body shops are significantly lower than they are for vehicle service work. So if you're getting a front end done, if you're getting brakes done, those areas derive a higher market rent. So when we look at the valuation process, because auto body shops are also factored in by what they get paid by MPIC, which has a huge impact on the rents they're able to pay. So when we're going through the valuation of the storage space or the vehicle service garage space, we need to make that connection between what service garages are, what they're doing, what type of work that they're doing in auto body shops. And in my analysis, because when I was looking, because we have 49 comparables for VSGs, and 13 out of the 49 are under $10 a square foot. Some of them are in inferior locations, some of them are older buildings, but the newer VSGs are getting market rents that are in the teens, anywhere from from $11 to up to $25. Like the new Cal tires out there with significant square footage of, like, say, 10,000 square feet. They're paying just for the land, not including the building, a land lease at $25 a square foot, and this is done on Portage Avenue, this is done on McPhillips, which is just as valuable or just as an important thoroughfare within the city of Winnipeg as Regent is. And so that's an important distinction that I want the board to acknowledge when they're going through the valuation process. Thank you.
Trevor?
Okay, so my summation then, in similar fashion, if you were to build a smaller footprint Cal tire or something of that nature on Portage, brand new these days, yes, it's going to have going to have a higher rent, that's quite clear. I find it interesting that I seem to be on the defensive in having to bring up these things in summation, as the onus is actually on the city in these cases, but as it's there, I will address it. The rents that I provide, that most reliance is placed on for vehicle service garages we're looking at the newer ones, obviously, and we're looking at Fountain Tire on Oak Point in 2013, 1118, 2554. Portage Avenue is our Birchwood dealership, which has a service area, 750 in 2015, 2014 lease, 2014 lease, Boyd Auto Body, 3570 Portage Avenue at $10 a square foot in 2014, 9368 square foot. These are good comparables. I've been through the comps and discussed why I presented the older automobile dealership comps for reference purposes. I don't think we need to cover that again. The city does not have 39 vehicle service garage comps. They have 39 big box comps, essentially, that we're looking at. These are not service garages, so it shouldn't be said that they're service garage comparables that have been used to identify the specific rental rate that is applied by the city. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on to 1 Owen Street, please. Mary, when you're ready. These are body shops, right?
Yep, we've actually touched upon this one a little bit, because this was a part of the co-op Birchwood Kia complex.
Yep.
File number 174877, 2018, business ID number is 35179. Owners are McGill Stevenson Company Limited. It's listed as BCC Holdings, but it's a Birchwood Collision Center. Total ARV that we have for this building is $236,580. We have a total area of 15,646, and an overall ARV of $15.12. In terms of area for air conditioning for the office space, it's only 944 square feet. And so our total occupancy costs is $28,866 plus $31,198 plus the base ARVs of the two, 182, 219, and 222, 286. Rounded gives us our value of the 236, 580. I've discussed my comparables in great detail. Page 3 is a similar shot that we've seen before. Page 4 shows the backing. And what's interesting, we had talked about a fence on this, right? So the co-op area between the car dealership, if you look at the top of page 4, on the left-hand side, there's the car wash. And there's actually a little fence there, and I think there's cars parked along that fence, which represents the Birchwood Kia side, just for clarification purposes, because we talked about who uses what land. So I think the land area with the co-op, obviously you have to give people access to the gas station, but there's actually a little fence there. And then the bottom of page 4 shows the picture of the Birchwood Auto Center and the access to it from Owen Street. And you can see all the variety of cars that are listed there that are servicing the auto body center. Page 5 shows how the assessed value was confirmed at 1376 Regent Avenue. Page 7, 8, 9 shows the workup, and now the value was confirmed at $6,636,000. And that confirms my presentation. Concludes. Thank you.
Question? Trevor?
Are any of the comps on your page 1 collision centers?
None of them are.
Okay. Are any of them comparable in size to the subject?
None of them are.
Is there any retail nature at all to the subject property?
Well, the retail.
Looking at page number 2 of your brief.
The retail nature of it would be the business, the actual coming in, servicing your car, going through the procedures. So because we do have 944 square feet where people are greeted, People have coffee there, they're waiting for their cars to get worked on. So to me, I thought 944 square feet represents the retail portion of the business.
Okay. Does the city have any collision center rental information in their vast database of rents that are submitted to the city?
I have stated, this building was built in 2006. Auto body centers are a lower rent. But the nature of the location of it, of the business, it's a part of one roll number, which is facing Regent. It's a high access travel area. And to me, the assessed value seems fair and consistent with other vehicle service garages.
So this is an auto collision center,
That
correct?
is correct.
Okay, so you're referencing the location of the property. I'm not sure what aerials we have here. Is there a map or, okay, looking at page 3 of your brief. So the subject property, 1 Owen, is it located on Regent Avenue?
No, it's not.
So it's located on the corner of Owen and Pandora at the rear of the site.
That is correct.
So how would the visibility of that be affected by being located a block off of Regent?
It wouldn't be
As well as the obstructing buildings in front of it? Do they receive the same amount of traffic flow at 1 Owen Street as they do at the Co-op Bar?
Definitely not.
Thank you.
No further questions?
That's it.
Susan?
Yep, same question again, I can't seem to, what's the
Square footage is right on the first page.
no, the rental rate you're looking at?
Oh,
For this
it's,
hearing.
It's right here.
well, it's $12.95 and $14.15.
Okay, thank you, so I was expecting it in the back again.
No,
Okay, that was my question, thank you.
Rob?
Maybe Trevor's hit on this already, but are any of these comparables on the first page, are they vehicle service garages?
none of them are.
Because, I mean, we've heard the information that car dealerships are hard to find rents for, but vehicle service garages, should there
Well,
be some?
There are some, and in terms of when I chose these comparables, in terms of efficiency and time, I chose ones that were either located in the north part of the city or the eastern part of the city. So, but what I have done is, because auto body shops are varied in size here, so it's, the subject property is 15,000 square feet, and I acknowledge the fact that the market rent, that this is larger than my comparables. But I'm consistent with the board decision that had taken place in 2018.
Okay. Does this collision repair shop seem bigger than what normal collision repair shop would be?
Well, it's interesting because I do have, there are a lot of collision repair shops that are, see, it's an interesting dynamic because there are some with the Boyd Auto Body Group, which is large players, and they have high rents, and those rents are in the $10 to $12 range. So my thought process is that because the 2018 realty was confirmed using this market rent, that's the information that I presented here today.
But would those Boyd ones be similar size, 15,000 square feet or something?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And bigger.
yeah. Well, there's some Boyd ones that are 10,000, yeah. There's some Boyds that are small because you got some that are in strip malls, right? So you have
Yes.
some Boyd models, you have one on Henderson Highway, right south of the Sobeys. You have another Boyd Auto Body that's located on McPhillips, which is in between Jefferson and Kingsbury. You'll have locations, you'll have some single standing units, you'll have a Boyd Auto Body, I do believe, at Norwood Square, at St. Boniface.
$9
Yep.
square foot.
Yep, and those are smaller ones too. So there's not one set answer. And then we'll have a lot of auto body shops that are mom and pop auto body shops that are smaller square footages. So for modeling purposes, I acknowledge the fact that the auto body shops are lower rents, but I provided comparables today that are within the subject property, which are on higher traffic areas. And because it's on the back portion of it, there's signage. I don't think there's signage for this Birchwood on this one. But because the Birchwood Auto Group is such a large economic entity within the Winnipeg marketplace, it's people go to Birchwood because of the name recognition and where they get the car service at, because they want that consistency there. And I'm confident that this dealership only does more than just the Birchwood Kia. I'm sure they do a lot of Birchwood automobiles. Because actually the subject property right to the east of this is also a Birchwood Auto Collision Center as well, which we won't be hearing today.
Thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
So why did you not bring in body shops when they're available?
Time constraints.
That's the
Time
reason?
constraints, yeah, and I could have done that, but also I want to be consistent with the board decision that had taken place, where they confirmed the assessed value for our property.
Do you always agree with the board decision?
I don't always agree with it when I believe, because as opposed to other people who present information, I believe there's a range of values, and I'm not so finite, so if a board cuts an assessment by 10%, I understand, because we could all come, look, we could all do a case study for school. We could all look at a case study, we could all do a property valuation, and we could all make certain assumptions. And I'm sure all of us will not have the same number. So I believe there's a range of assessment values.
So in this-
And so, with regard to that, with that being said, I've stated why I presented the information that I presented here today.
I just want to make it perfectly clear, you did not use the model to drive this.
Well, because, but you also got to understand, the model doesn't differentiate between auto body shops and vehicle service garages where they actually serve vehicles. The market's not that finite. We don't have enough comparables. Because then what will happen is, so the only market rents that we have would be a handful of them, of older buildings, of collision centers, you know, because once you take the outliers out, there's not enough good data to create a model for auto body shops. That's why when we go to our approach to value here, when we're looking at car dealerships and where we're looking at other retail centers, those are closer to, there's a lot of market data.
What year was this built?
This was built in 2006.
Okay, we'll leave Trevor
I have one follow-up question,
to.
as I didn't notice this. So I'm looking at your page number 1 and the rental rate applied to the premise area. So the 1575 square feet that we're looking at there, that's the mezz, correct?
That is the second floor area.
Right, and we've applied a higher rental rate of $14.15 a square foot to that mezzanine area, correct?
Yep.
Is there any rental potential for a space like that out there on the market?
Of course not. And
Are
this
they
is the, and
typically cut in roughly half as far as the rent that's applied to those?
definitely
spaces?
not, because every situation is different, and the quality of the space is different. So without doing an inspection of it, if it's quality office space, if it's 1,500 square feet of office space in this building, then you would definitely not be cut in half.
Have you seen the space?
I have not, it's not my property, it's not one that I've inspected,
Yeah.
it's not on my client list that I'll appeal, and so, no, I have not been to this property.
So you're unaware of what's in the?
I do not know the quality of finish for the basements, the space.
Okay, thank you.
On with your presentation.
All right, so we're looking at a collision center. So really looking at collision centers is the best evidence of what rental rates should be for such things. Pardon me. The comps presented by the city are all in retail centers or on mainline thoroughfares such as Henderson, McPhillips, St. Anne's, etc. And are roughly half the size. The rental rates that are derived for such premises, half or less, actually 3,000 square feet, are not appropriate for a comparison to the subject property. And I believe there's probably other collision center rental rates out there that the city has available that we don't see today. Unfortunately, we don't get all of that information, and I can't bring it all forward. But what I do see, looking at the city's comps here, is the largest comp of Boyd Auto Body, so collision center, same as this subject, 2142 McPhillips Street, is at $11.50 a square foot for under half the size of space, 6,238 square feet. And yet we're looking at a rental rate of $12.95 and $14.15 for somewhere in the 13 neighborhood for the subject property. Looking at my brief, location obviously has an impact. If you're located right on Portage Avenue with signage and visibility to passing cars, obviously that's a benefit to your business. We're not located on Regent Avenue. Yes, we're on the same site as the dealership. We're located behind the dealership, behind the co-op. You can't see it. There's no signage. It doesn't have that drive-by traffic that you have a block up. Is the traffic close? Sure it is. But it's not the same thing. And obviously collision centers service all brands of all cars, no matter where you buy them, not just Birchwood. It's whoever goes there is free to use that center. Visibility obviously has an impact on the property, and again, we also deal with economies of scale. So the one collision center that the city shows is at $11.50 for 6,000+ square feet. We're at over 15,000 square feet. The comps that I show on my page number 7 are as shown. 3570 Portage Avenue is a Boyd Collision Center, 9,300 square feet, 2014 lease at $10 a square foot. We have, again, skip number 2, please, that was meant to be excluded. We have 2535 Inkster, 20,000 square feet, so a little bit larger than the subject, built in 98. 5-year term, $8 per square foot lease, probably somewhat higher than that as of the 2016 date, so in the neighborhood of $9.50 perhaps. 140 Warman Road is a Fountain Tire 2013 lease at $10 a square foot, auto repair there. They do truck servicing largely in that location. The same with Oak Point Highway, $11.18 a square foot for, again, roughly half the size. And some other collision centers and repair centers, 1123 Notre Dame, $7.50 a square foot in 2014 for 4,000 square feet. And there's others, but they go back a bit further. So what our comps are showing us is that $10 a square foot is a reasonable expectation for a net rental rate for the subject. Given its location, the size of the facility, etc. So our range, and indeed there is a range, runs from $635 up to $1143, still well under what the city is applying. So we've used a rental rate of $10 a square foot for the subject property. The business assessment was decided in the last cycle at $10 a square foot. I really don't see any true change that would be specifically applicable to this property or this industry that would drive a higher rental rate than that for this property. The $10 a square foot using the expenses gives us our final estimate of value of $188,520. I would point out, and I didn't include it, but our realty decision on the other Birchwood Collision Center in the Point West Park for the 2018 cycle was based on a net rental rate of $10 a square foot, which is where we're at for the subject property. And that is my presentation. Thank you very much.
Mayor, questions?
Yep. Is 2535 Inkster Boulevard parked as a warehouse, or is it parked as a VSG, the vehicle service garage?
I'm unaware of its particular puck, because
Okay.
I don't work for the assessment
Okay,
department,
fair
but
enough.
it is a collision repair center.
Okay, so is it one of your properties?
No, it is not.
No, it's not, okay. So for realty, you don't know if it's industrial or a vehicle
I
service
do
garage?
not know.
Okay. So 140 Wareham is slightly smaller, the comparable number 5, at 9,490 square feet, significantly older building, $10 in an inferior location. Would Wareham be a superior or inferior location to one Owen?
And I understand your question, it's somewhat dependent, is my answer. That particular location is a tire and truck service center,
Okay.
located just off of Lagimodier, just south of the overpass, and has been there for years, and they renewed at the rate of $10 a square foot. Obviously, it's a good location for them. They were willing to pay for it.
But in terms of access and convenience for a person who's bringing their car to get serviced, would it be superior or inferior?
I don't think it would be a lot different.
Okay.
It has good access off of
Okay.
Lagimodier.
Okay, so just to clarify, you're using the range of 635 in your appeals, but it's actually the range is from $7 to $11.43, right?
Yes, and
Okay.
I apologize for that.
And
It's
so-
$7.50 at the low end or $7.
So 226 St. Anne's comparable number 10, you're using $11.43 for a rent on a lease that was signed in 2007. Do you have that current leasable information on that?
I didn't have it updated.
Okay.
Now, as you had mentioned earlier, there's actually two tenants on site. One
Yep.
of them is Midas and the other is a similar outlet,
Yep.
a tire center or something of that nature. The building's very, very in size, and I did not have
Okay.
access to the updated.
Because it was one of my comparables, and the current rent for that would be
Wow.
$15.98. So which is significantly higher than the $11.43 that you're presenting here.
It has changed now. Let's look at that. We're looking at 3,800 square feet on the corner of St. Anne's and Fermor, right by Superstore and Safeway, et cetera. It's a major intersection. We're not that size. We're not on the.
I understand that, but you've presented here information of $11.43, which is not reflective of current market rents.
Mirek, if I had the updated information, I would have presented
Okay,
it.
no problem, it's just, well, you had it in all my briefs here, so that's why. And is 120 King Edward, is that superior or inferior property to the subject?
120 King Edward is actually as you head north on Route 90, Route 90 splits, and in between is the multi-bay industrial quasi-office place. I'm not sure who the owner is now, but it's always a major national ownership, such as Morgard or ING at one point. It's not a bad location.
Okay. But the building itself, with that, I'm talking about, because there are a lot of limitations with that building in terms of egress and access for cars to be serviced in that building. So I was wondering if you're aware of that or not.
I am, I would agree that access is probably inferior to that site.
Okay. And that lease was signed in 2008 of $7?
That's correct.
No other questions?
Susan?
No questions.
Robert?
Have you inspected any of these comparables that you have on page 7?
That I have?
Yes.
I have been in a number of them, yes. I won't say I've been in all of them.
Would you say that the subject property is superior to these comparables?
I would consider it to be quite comparable to my number one there, 3570 Portage.
Okay. Do you have any time adjustments? I see some of the leases here are getting, some of them are only 2 years old, but some of them are 3 and 4 and 5 years old. Do you have any time adjustments that you use to bring them to April 1st, 2016?
No, not specifically, not in the way that the assessment department does using their modeling, et cetera. And I understand why they do that. What we do in the appraisal profession, obviously, is take the market information as it stood as of the date that it was struck, so the leases that are shown, and look at that in comparison to the property that you're looking at as of the reference date. So obviously, you want to get as good a leases as you can, as close to the reference date as you can. And make that comparison. But if your ones are a bit older, obviously you look at that and do make a professional judgment and adjustment for the time if the market shows that it has risen for that particular type of realty in that location, et cetera. So we did obviously look at what would be appropriate at the valuation date for the subject. If you look at 3570 Portage Avenue, it's a considerably superior location to the location of the subject property. If you look at signage, visibility, access, et cetera, it is a superior property to the subject. And yes, it was struck in 2014, and the size is roughly 2/3 of what the subject is. So we're not underestimating at $10 a square foot for 15,000 square feet in 2016.
How about the age of the 3570 Portage?
It is an older building, but it has been renovated, as most properties of older nature have.
Thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
So on your page 8, you use the city parameters right through, right?
Correct.
Heat, hydro, even the square footage? Yes, you did.
The square footage is accurate, yes.
Okay. You didn't make an adjustment on your vents for the mezzanine?
No, and we don't do it quite in that fashion. We look at, it's not two individual spaces, it's what will the tenant rent the building, you know, and all of its
Mhm.
associated space for. So the mezzanine space is included in what the tenant would rent it for. It would never be rented out individually. And if it was, it would be a nominal amount.
Especially this one. Okay, no, I have no further questions. Summation, Merrick?
I don't have a summation if Trevor doesn't have.
I'm fine.
You're good, too? Good. Let's go to the last property. 1310 Regent. I don't feel we've done this before.
It's right beside the Richard Ford. It's a small used car dealership. File number 174887, 1310 Regent Avenue West. Business ID number is 41189. Business name is Birchwood Keystone Ford. Owners are BFR Holdings Limited. ARV is 121,260. Total area is 8,052 square feet with an overall ARV of $15.06. There is no service garage portion to this building, so the area and the base ARV is 102,341 in total value, using the 1271 per square foot. Occupancy cost is 18,922. We have an annual rental value of 121,260. Please ignore, we're asking for the assessment to be confirmed. Please ignore my comparables on page 1 because there is no VSG on this. We discussed the comparables that I used on page 2 quite extensively. Page 3 shows where the building's located at. So when we looked at 1300 Keystone Ford directly east of the building or on the right-hand side, this is the little used car dealership that's on the side that supports Keystone Ford. Page 4 shows the board decision that had taken place where they had reduced the value based on adjusted net operating income and a cap rate of 8.25. So what's interesting about this is it says based on adjusted net operating income and a cap rate of 8.25. So if you look at the values here, the assessed value was $1,002,241,000. So we've got the 2 rents there completed at the $1,241,000 rounded at 7.75 cap rate. And then when I entered the 8.25 cap rate, it matched very close to it was $1,000 off from 1,067. So in my eyes, it's only $1,000 difference. They didn't really adjust the market rent that significantly, which is why I'm asking for the market rent to be confirmed for the business assessment value of $121,260. That concludes my presentation.
Trevor?
I have no questions.
Robert?
Just to confirm here on your map on page 3. So we have the collision center we were just dealing with, and then next door to it, and the next property over.
Yep. So exactly, so here, well, it's like almost all the properties that we've dealt with here, right?
Yeah.
So what
there's the
happens
Ford
is, okay,
dealership there,
so
yeah.
there's, yeah, and so right directly behind the subject property that we're looking at, that's another Birchwood Auto Collision Center that they have there on that separate roll number directly. Here, I'll show you here because we didn't color it, and I apologize. I hit color and you got color code, Trevor has it. So what happens, here is here's Birchwood Ford, here's used Birchwood Ford, here's the auto body shop we were just dealing with, here's another auto body shop that we're not dealing with here today.
Which one are we dealing with now? This
We're dealing with, this is the one we talked about, this is
Oh, yeah, that's
101.
the other one, yes.
And this is the one we're dealing with right now.
Okay,
Okay?
I got it.
Yep.
And I apologize for that.
Know it well.
It's just you throw it well.
So you're saying there's no vehicle servicing going on here?
Not that I know of, based on the information I have presented in front of me. I haven't had a chance to look at Trevor's brief. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't, I don't know. I've never been in this building. No. And see, it looks like there is some detailing services here on Trevor's brief, so.
Well, we haven't, we'll get to that later.
Yeah, but it's, I haven't been there, so I don't know. And we just have it as one business unit.
Okay, that's all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
No questions.
I was gonna say, Trevor, any questions? On with your presentation, Trevor.
Okay, 1310 Regent is the used car dealer for Ford on Regent. Built in 87, obviously undersized at 8,049 square feet for modern dealerships, so it's not a modern dealer, it's its sole use is used cars. So yes, there is, well, well, it's not really a service center, there is a detailing center, but takes up a significant amount of space of the building at the rear of it. Used for, obviously, car washing, detailing cars, cars for sale there. You can see that on my page number 3. The build-out of the center being built in '87, it's had very little actually renovation since that time. Low T-bar ceilings, you can see the older tiles on the floor, etc. It's, I won't say it's claustrophobic because I don't want to exaggerate, but it's not what you would certainly find these days. The level of finish of the office area is shown at the bottom of page 3, so it's not a high-end center, certainly. Pardon me. It does have a decent land to plan area ratio on site for this, so we're not quibbling about that. Again, however, what will a property rent for on the market? Well, that depends on location, utility to users, users being automotive dealers essentially for a specific use building such as this, and finish obviously comes into play. So that certainly is one aspect. Looking at the subject and appropriate rental rate for it, we're looking at just over 8,000 square feet. The 2016 decision on the subject property was $11.50 a square foot. There's been absolutely no change to the building since that time. Nothing to drive certainly any greater rent for it. The market is flat. We're not seeing things shift in any real way there. So we have applied the same $11.50 per square foot rental rate to this property. Used car dealers, you do see them come and go. Now, we have to be fair and equitable in arriving at our decisions. Yes, this is owned by a larger organization, but that's not really what we're looking at. It's not who owns it and what should they pay. It's what is the real estate and what would it rent for on the marketplace. So if this were out there, you have 8,000 square feet with older finishes and probably an oversized service bay at the back. $11.50 is certainly appropriate. And I believe I've included the BA from the prior 2016 cycle to that effect. Thank you very much.
Question, Merritt?
Okay, so my only question is, on your comparables on your last page, 12 of your comparable leases are older than 2,000, they're more than 6 years old. Is that correct?
I think we've gone through this in
Okay,
detail.
I just want, because you have a bit more leases here, so that's why I never saw this one before. So I just
No,
want
it's the same. Each of them is the same.
Okay,
You can look
maybe it just looks a bit different because it's on one page, but I see it more clearly here because it's on one page. No other questions, thank you.
Robert?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Susan?
No questions.
And none from me? You're done.
Thank you very much.
I'm like, shut her down. You gotta pay your parking by when?
12:30.